Warehousing Development and Regulatory Authority, Mr. Amit Kumar Singh, Managing Director and Director for Marketing and Corporate Planning, Central Warehousing Corporation, Mr. Sachin Bhanushali, who is the advisor of our FICCI Committee on Logistics, business leaders, members from the diplomatic community, and friends from media. A robust and cost-effective logistic and warehousing sector has become crucial in the global business and economic environment. The sector plays an important role in supporting the country's comprehensive logistic infrastructure and achieving its vision to become the world's third largest economy by 2027. We are very confident that the initiatives taken by the government and the active participation of the industry will pave the way forward for the development of the sector. We have amongst us distinguished panel to deliberate upon the key opportunities and latest development in the sector. To begin with, I invite Mr. Sachin Bhanushali to deliver the welcome address and set the context for today's summit. Mr. Bhanushali, please.
Hello, good morning, dignitaries on the dais and delegates participating in this important event, which plans to focus on warehousing and supply chain. At the outset, it's my privilege to welcome Ms. Sumita Daura, Special Secretary Logistics, DPIIT, to the Warehousing and Supply Chain Summit, wherein we want to primarily focus on building reliable, resilience, and sustainable supply chain. Thank you so much, Sumita. I also have the privilege of being on the dais with Mr. T.K. Manoj Singh and Mr. Amit Kumar Singh. I think warehousing is a subject which has been discussed by many but understood by few. And those who understand it are participating in the event today. I'm sure we will be immensely benefited by the deliberation as well as the question answer session, which will be a part of the event today. When we look at Indian manufacturing sector in particular, both on the consumer side as well as on the industrial side, one of the areas where the shoe pinches is logistics. And within logistics, I think there are two aspects of logistics which kind of cause concern in the minds of not only the logistics managers in the companies, in the manufacturing entities, but also amongst the C-suite executives. Transportation and warehousing. It's elementary if you look at it that way, and that's why probably a lot of people discuss a lot about logistics, but when it comes to brass tacks, there are many areas which require tightening up from regulatory point of view as well as from practice point of view, whether it is integration or whether it is use of technology in order to deliver the right kind of service mix, product mix to the industry. Couple of thoughts that I would like to put forth before I request the dignitaries on the dais to come and speak and share their thoughts with all of you. One is that there has always been a concern about logistics cost in India, and there has been a great deal of disagreement about what is the logistics cost. So currently we follow the methodology of logistics as a percentage of GDP to be the actual logistics cost. So that basically brings us on a same page as far as understanding of the concept is concerned. If we deep dive into the concept of logistics cost, we look at transportation cost as well as cost of carrying inventory, which has two aspects: cost of inventory itself, which is on roads or on rail, and the cost of carrying that inventory, because you need to create a huge amount of infrastructure in order to ensure that the inventories are carried. Now, the inventory levels in general in India are considered to be on the higher end, primarily because our transport delivery system is not considered as reliable as it should be. So if we compare road transportation versus rail transportation, both operate at a fairly reasonable 20-24 kilometers per hour kind of average speed. Speed is not something that should impress you. What should impress one is essentially the transit time. But when it comes to transit time, our transit times from a distance point of view, despite being a fairly large geography, despite being almost a subcontinental geography, are not as reliable. In fact, when you go to logistics manager, one of the things that they ask for is that what is the assurance that 95% of the cargo will reach in time so that patency of our production system, our assembly line, is maintained. I think that's where there is going to be a great deal of efficiency which can be brought in by adding additional capacity to rail transportation. Now, if we look at it from cost point of view as well as from an environmental impact point of view, I think rail transportation in Indian context has to play a very great role. It's not just because I'm an ex-railway person, but I genuinely believe that if railways are able to deliver their freight transportation service at a significantly better transit times as compared to road transportation, not only the logistics cost will come down, but it will also result to a very great extent. And when I say logistics cost, I mean all the three components. It will affect to a very great extent as far as the level of the inventories which are maintained, as well as the cost of carrying that inventory. On the backdrop of GST, another point that I feel is important is that now we are more than 5 years old in GST. One of the points that I always feel strongly about is that change in distribution methodology in India, with GST having practically eliminated what can be called interstate barriers, hasn't taken place at a pace at which it should have taken place. So we continue to be dependent heavily on road transportation as far as manufacturing industry is concerned, and that does result into fragmentation of cargo, and fragmentation of cargo results into particularly the warehousing solutions, whether it is for supply chain solutions, whether it is for distribution solutions, or whether it is for fulfillment solutions, being operated out of small outfits rather than larger warehousing parks in the multimodal logistics park that we are going to talk about, do not bring in the advantage. So I think there is a time for us to look at a revolutionary change in the way we do our distribution business. So that's the second thought that I would like to put forth. The idea of this event today essentially is not only listen to the experts, but also listen to the people who actually feel the pinch of the shoe and understand where regulatory changes as well as changes in the methodology of the industry are required to be undertaken. So I think with that, I would request the event to move forward as far as today's discussion is concerned. I once again thank people on the dais for having graciously agreed to take time out of their busy schedule and join us for this event. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bhanushali. I would now invite Mr. Amit Kumar Singh to deliver his address, please.
Dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished members of Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and all present here. It's a great pleasure and gratitude I stand here before you. It is a privilege to put forth my views on this crucial topic of reliable, resilient and sustainable supply chains. And the way I like what Sachin just mentioned, a lot of people talk about warehousing, but few understand. He has made my task a little difficult. Because though coming from a warehousing background of 2 years only, I have majorly been in a transportation sector, and I would supposed to be talking about warehousing. So bear with me on that. We are all aware that it's a increasingly interconnected supply chains play a vital and pivotal role in economic growth and facilitating trade and meeting the needs of consumers. While navigating the complexities of today's global landscape, it is imperative that we focus on supply chains which are not only efficient, but cost-effective, resilient, and sustainable. When we talk of reliability, what comes to mind is that we should be able to give a consistent performance, the degree of consistent performance, and perform without failure. So the key parameters, one would say, would be consistency, timelines, quality, transparency, flexibility, and effective communication. So reliability becomes the foundation stone for any supply chain system. And to achieve that, we have to look at the bottlenecks, enhancing coordination, and about optimizing the systems. The two key components, transportation and warehousing, which are part of the logistics supply chain, I won't talk much about the transportation part. Sachin has already touched on that aspect, that if the railway systems are becoming more robust in the future and the capacities are created, then as economy as a whole, we are going to be more focused on producing a reliable and resilient supply chain system. And it is also going to be impacting very positively on the logistics cost. When you look at the warehousing sector, what we see in the span of these 2 years which I have spent in the warehousing sector, what I observe is that it's a very scattered sector. There is a lot of smaller players. The efficiencies in the system many times are not there. Standardizations are not there. And the recent effort which has come with the National Logistics Policy and the warehousing booklet which has come out of that is definitely a very significant step in that direction. At CWC, Central Warehousing Corporation, you see, when initially we started, it was majorly for food grain and agribusiness. And the standards that were created for the warehouses to deal with that kind of cargo were created and adopted as per what CWC has been doing. CWC in that way has done a very good development in terms of creating food grain warehouses at that point of time when it was initially started. But over a period of time, I must admit that there has been a lot of development and evolution which has taken place in the sector, which probably we have not kept pace with. And that is where a lot of work which needs to be done. The standardization of warehousing sector, consolidation in the sector, and bringing in the processes which should be in tune with the latest systems, adopting the technologies AI, IoT, and blockchains, etc. It's all known to everybody. That would go a long way in creating a reliable and resilient systems. The last few years, which we have seen the COVID pandemic, which has brought to the fore the importance of bringing in resilience in the systems. We have all seen how the disruptions can have severe consequences on supply chains. And that is where that we need to diversify into various different sourcing strategies, develop alternatives for not only transportation routes, but other services, foster collaborations with multiple suppliers. And that is where I think the resilience in the system would come in from. Without elaborating much on the other aspects which are very well known, there are two thoughts which come to my mind and which I think are very crucial and important in developing such which will have an impact on reliable resilience and sustainable systems. When we talk of domestic cargo business, there is a lot of opportunity which is there in terms of consolidation and containerization. When we look at the EXIM business, if you really look at it, the systems are very well established. There are established systems of terminals of CFS, ICDs, ports, consolidators, LCL operators, CHAs, shipping lines, all the systems are very well oiled and in place. But when you look at the domestic sector, you look at the different clusters, industry clusters, consumption centers. Although there are individual players in the field who are doing this kind of activity of consolidation of cargo, but on a large scale, as a system, there does not exist any infrastructure for that kind of an activity, where you can connect an industry cluster with a consumption center. The consolidation, the amount of movement which is individual cargo which is moving from any industry clusters to consumption centers, and the number of vehicles which you see on the road or on the road is high. That is where how do you ensure reliability and resilience in such kind of a system, where the opportunities for collaboration and aggregation of cargo in the domestic sector, which is connecting to the production and the consumption center, does not exist in a systematic manner. So that is where I think there is an opportunity where such an infrastructure which needs to be created. The MMLPs which are planned and coming up can play a very crucial role in this. The need is to identify the clusters of industries, the production centers and the consumption centers, and create such hubs, domestic cargo aggregation centers like the CFS ICD, and facilitate the cargo flows. That will help, that will impact, to my mind, the supply chains in a big way. Another thought which comes to my mind, which of course definitely again is not very new. There are players who are doing this kind of activity, but if you look at it, there is so much of road movement which is taking place through and fro, and a lot of which is empty movement. A truck going with loaded cargo and coming by the empty, there's no connect for the reverse flows. So if you, it's the parallels available. Like you see the ONDC which has been created for the smaller retailers and vendors. So this is a platform which brings in all the small retailers and vendors who can just connect to the consumers. So the time has come, I think, where there has to be a platform where the transport service providers and the demand where it originating needs to connect in a bigger platform. If you look at any port or any industry cluster and we see the number of flows which is the empty direction, it will be an interesting study to see as to what is the percentage of empty flows which is moving and what is the cost which is we are incurring on it. After all, when you talk of reliable, resilient and sustainable systems, it's ultimately the aim is to reduce the cost of logistics. So these are the two thoughts which I thought I'll share with you. And thank you very much. Once again, it's been a privilege to be here with you today. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amitji. I now request Mr. T.K. Manoj Kumar to kindly take the dais and address the gathering, please.
Yeah. I've been told to speak for 5 minutes. I'll try to stick to that. So, a very good morning to all of you, and particularly the distinguished people on the dais, Mr. Bansali, my colleague Mr. Amit Singh, and Special Secretary Sumita Davra. We are lucky to have the presence of a senior official here, and of course Nirja Singh. I think it's very topical that FICCI is organizing this session on reliability, sustainability, and building resilient supply chains. It's an extremely important topic given the stage of development this country is in, and it is an area where all of us will have to work with very renewed efforts. The previous speakers have raised some very important issues. I was listening to them. Mr. Bansali talked about the cost of logistics and the need to reduce it, and of course standardization and connectivity. Mr. Amit Singh has also emphasized upon connectivity and the fact that there are certain disconnects at various places. He has given a very interesting idea of having aggregators, warehousing aggregators, certain centers, which he said would impact the sector quite a bit. And this, I think, is definitely an idea which is worth considering. I would like to add my little bit in also to the discussion, and I would like to focus only upon one thing, that is, I would say a mantra which could probably solve the problems that the sector is still facing, that is standardization. If we standardize, and by standardization I would also include digitization. If we standardize and digitize, I think that the problems that the warehousing sector faces today would be sorted out to a large extent. And I shall confine my remarks on how this can be done and how my organization, that is the Warehousing Development and Regulatory Authority, can help in doing the standardization and digitization. Now, before I go into it, I must also mention, it is indeed important to mention at this point of time about the fact that the logistics policy has been and was announced by Mrs. Davra's department last year. The Prime Minister had announced it, and that actually sets the tone for all our discussion, because the goals are very clear in the logistic policy. It also talks of standardization, digitization of documents, seamless connectivity, etc., and that can serve as a lodestone as far as our efforts are concerned. Now, coming to the Warehousing Development and Regulatory Authority, this is the warehouse regulator, but it is also a slightly different regulator in the sense that regulation is not mandatory. We regulate only those warehouses which intend to issue negotiable warehouse receipts, or were issuing these receipts at the time the regulator was formed. Now, what exactly does WDRA do? 2 or 3 things. First of all, we register warehouses which want to issue negotiable warehousing receipts, and this registration is only of those warehouses which meet basic infrastructural standards. These standards can be of the BIS, it can be of the FCI, it can be also be that of the CWC. So essentially we are trying to bring about a certain uniformity in the warehousing sector so that all the warehouses follows certain engineering specifications which are common across the country. Point number 2, we also insist that the various processes followed within the warehouses, the standard operating procedure for maintaining the goods is done as per certain laid down specifications. So people can know what they are getting. They know that if goods are kept in these warehouses, it will be looked after in this particular manner. So so many fumigation cycles would be there. This would be the stacking plan, etc., etc. I'll not go into the details, but we are trying to bring in a certain amount of predictability and interoperability into this sector so that you know what you are in for once you put your goods into this warehouses registered by WDRA. Third, and perhaps the most important point, the warehouses registered by us are entitled to issue what are called negotiable warehouse receipts under the WDRA Act. Now these warehouse receipts are slightly different from the normal warehouse receipts in the sense that these are documents of title and they can be endorsed by the holder to a buyer and the title passes to the buyer. So a person can actually acquire the goods without even inspecting the goods or removing it from the warehouse, because these warehouse receipts contain full details of the quantity as well as the quality of the goods. And since the warehouses are regularly inspected by us and there are provisions in the Act which prevent or which act as a deterrent to any kind of malfeasance, so with a certain degree of confidence people can do transactions quickly. So these are so this is one factor which would make it useful to deal with a WDRA registered warehouse. So having quickly told about what the organization does, let me also just share a few recent developments. Government of India has been supporting us. Recently, the Food Corporation of India last year issued orders that anybody who keeps procured stock in a private warehouse, because FCI cannot keep all his goods in his own warehouses because of certain limitations, and neither can the state warehousing corporation. So the private sector warehouses are used to a very large extent. These warehouses have to be registered with WDRA. So they are doing it to ensure that they have standard warehouses where standard procedures are followed, where there can be interoperability and so on, and which would result in loss of damages due to pests and transit and things like that. So this is one very important development that has come in, and certain state governments have also taken the initiative to ensure that their goods are kept in WDRA registered warehouses. So my appeal to today's function is that if we have to attain these goals of sustainability, reliability and resilience, do insist on WDRA registered warehouses, because that is precisely what we are trying for, and this is what we are implementing. The more the industry shifts to registered warehouses, the closer we would be to these lofty goals that we have set towards us. And I'm sure that this would result in a sea change in the warehousing sector. I will now close by offering a last point. In the year 2017, we decided to digitize the warehouse receipt. We are probably the first digitized warehouse receipt in the country. All the warehouses registered with us, their receipts are digitized and they are stored in 2 repositories which have been engaged by us. So we have taken efforts to digitize this sector. Now all sectors are getting digitized, particularly the finance sector. Transactions are getting more and more digitized. So I think it's only a matter of time before the warehousing sector, the warehouse receipt finance sector and the warehouse transactions also get digitized. So it makes sense to get onto this bandwagon before competitors and before the rest of the world also gets into the digitized mode of warehouse receipt transactions. So I will leave you all with these thoughts. I'm open to questions. We are an organization based at Delhi. We have a fairly open website. It contains informative website, and we would be very, very happy to reply to any queries raised by anybody. I've already exceeded my time by exactly double the time. 5 minutes was what was given to me. I think I've spoken for 10 minutes. I crave the indulgence of Vicky for that. And once again, I wish all of you present here a very good morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar. We are happy to announce that Vicky, in partnership with Grant Thornton Bharat, who's also the knowledge partner for today's summit, has prepared a report on evolving landscape of warehousing and logistics in India, a roadmap to becoming the third largest economy by 2027. Before we take this opportunity to invite Ms. Davra for releasing this report, I would like to invite Mr. Ramendra Verma, National Sector Leader and Partner, Grant Thornton, to join us on the stage for the report launch. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. The knowledge report captures the developments in the multifaceted world of warehousing and logistics supply chain, offering a macro analysis of the present landscape while presenting the outlook as well. This report discusses the pivotal role played by the government in shaping policies to promote a resilient warehousing and logistic ecosystem. The National Logistic Policy and the National Warehouse Policy are powerful initiatives that underscore the government's commitment to catalyzing growth in this sector. Before we invite Ms. Davra to deliver the inaugural address, there is a small video on PM Gati Shakti, which we would like to play, after which we will request her to kindly address the gathering today.
India is swiftly advancing on the path of Amrit Kaal, laying the foundation for the next 25 years. The GIS
Please bear for a second, we are trying to fix the glitch.
If it is going to take longer, then we can request
start
Ms.
with the
Davra
speech,
to address us before the movie as well. Just let us know.
Good morning to all, and let me admit at the beginning that the video is ours, and we thought we'll play it so that you can understand some things better and I can save my breath. So that was the idea, but we will nevertheless show you the video. It's a 5-minute video which showcases Honorable Prime Minister's transformative approach to infrastructure planning in the country. How is it a transformative approach, and how is it revolutionizing the face of infrastructure planning in the country, bringing about multimodality to all big ticket infrastructure works, whether they be railway or road or ports and so on, and how you can use it for better planning for your warehouses, whether they are in the private sector or in the public sector, and also for supply chain resilience. So that was the idea. Nevertheless, we are persistent and we will show you the video, maybe after I've spoken. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to today's meeting, today's summit on warehousing and supply chain resilience. As I see, you are going to have 2 sessions during the next few hours. You will have a session on warehouses, what are the opportunities and what is the status, how do we go ahead, and then you'll have a session on the supply chain ecosystem. And in both these sessions, the transformative approach I spoke about for planning infrastructure, whether it is warehouses, planning multimodal connectivity to your warehouses, or supply chain resilience, infrastructure, logistics services are critical to both. So before I talk more about my work, which I anchor in logistics division, that will be PM Gati Shakti approach and logistics policy, and I try to connect it to your areas of interest. I would like to say a few things in a general way. First of all, on warehousing, I tried to see what is happening, and some things do come to my attention. We have meetings like the multimodal logistics parks, which the Ministry of Road Transport Highways is planning across the country. And you would be aware that the multimodal logistics park in Guwahati is already under development. The ones in Chennai, Bangalore, Indore are also well on their way to development, and there are many more which are planned and are at feasibility stage. From what I know, about 35 such multimodal logistics parks, mega logistics parks, are being planned across the country. And the railways is planning the cargo terminals. We have the integrated container depots, we have the CFSs, plus we have the CWC, you just heard, sir, and we have the FCI godowns and so on and so forth for different kinds of commodities. In the private sector, you know better than me about the warehousing facilities. Now, what do these warehouses do? Of course, you are the masters, you know everything, but when I try to think from logistics point of view, they bring synergies and they bring a modal shift, like in the case of Jogigopa Multimodal Park, which we are planning on the banks of the Brahmaputra in Assam, which has a railway line about 4 kilometers away, the national highway couple of kilometers away. We are bringing connectivity. We are putting a bridge across the Brahmaputra to connect the other side of the banks to the Jogigopa Multimodal Park, bringing stronger connectivity to the rest of Northeast and cutting down the transport time from about 7 hours to just half an hour. So this is the kind of multimodality we are bringing at Jogigopa Multimodal Logistics Park. Plus there will be the modal shift. We'll be using the Brahmaputra river waters more for transportation. The inland waterways will be used. So it does bring synergies. It brings about a modal shift. It helps in climate, it is more climate friendly, environment friendly. Like we just spoke about the modal shift, and when there is aggregation and disaggregation points at the warehouses for products, we have better energy mix, and our transportation systems perform more efficiently. We are able to plan better, and congestion mitigation, of course, and economic development, the employment opportunities, the investments it attracts, and the productivity it brings to the economy. So these are so many benefits of the work which all of you are doing in warehouses. Now we are also coming up, we hear more and more about concept of freight villages. And other day I was at Kolkata Port Trust. They are planning a freight village so that they can decongest the city. There must be many more such proposals. I may not be aware of them. So this is about warehousing, and you will be discussing much more when you sit and talk about what is the status and what more is needed. When you talk about what more is needed, it's not government alone that works. We all work together. And that's where we need to build synergies. And that is one major reason why I'm really thankful to FICCI for bringing us together today and helping us connect with our thoughts, our ideas. And I hope this will continue, a dialogue continues on how we help each other to achieve better synergies in our work. Coming to supply chains, now that is the second part, and I don't think we've really spoken about that much, but you'll be speaking much more later today. What is a supply chain? You know, I worked for 3.5 years in China in the Indian mission, and it was always, it was an oft-repeated statement that the supply chains are very strong. What exactly is supply chain? It took me some time to understand. And to put it very simply, a supply chain, it transforms raw material and components into products. So there are raw materials, there's transportation, there is aggregation of components, raw material, there is infrastructure required, there are services required to support that. It comes to a production center, so there has to be investments in manufacturing, and then the finished products need to go to the consumers. The consumers sit in the rest of India. They could be in as far as Andaman Nicobar, Port Blair. They could be in Ladakh. They could be in foreign countries, the export markets. So supply chains, they tell us an interconnected journey. And this is the journey which has to be more efficient. The supply chain's efficiency brings a more competitive manufacturing because our logistics cost becomes more competitive. As a producer, as a maybe big company, you feel that you have the best technology and you are producing very cost effectively. But you also want efficient supply chains so that your cost of logistics doesn't go so much high that you cannot compete globally. So that is the criticality of understanding supply chain management. And that is where, when we talk about Make in India for the world, we talk about attracting supply chains, we talk about value chains. Now, there is a difference between supply chain and value chain, which you would be aware more than me. What I understand is, as the supply chains develop, they evolve, more and more value gets added in terms of how we are able to bring together the production processes and the raw material movement. For example, you think of iPhone manufacturing, how many components come from around the world? But as you have more strengthened supply chains, it's not just your labor component, it's also the many components which start getting manufactured in the country, and the same supply chains, they deliver more value. So that is how we are looking at going ahead. That is how we are approaching 2047. And what is the importance of 2047? We complete 100 years of independence. We are so proud about that. And we have the GDP target of $32 trillion plus when we are at 2047. And that's when, as per the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister, we will be a developed nation. So we will no longer be in the low middle income, we will be a developed nation. How do we do that? Through all that we spoke about, through the ambitious PLI scheme, for example, the production linked incentive, which is for creating global champions in manufacturing. But then again, the supply chain management, the cost efficiency of logistics, the logistics ecosystem. So all these are interconnected, very important, attracting foreign investments, attracting domestic investments. Everything becomes a very important part of the entire economic system. Now, having said all this, I would like to talk about the Gati Shakti National Master Plan, which we'll also show you in the movie. You see, we spoke about infrastructure, we spoke about investments, we saw in the latest union budget, the Honorable Finance Minister has announced a historic outlay for infrastructure. And you would recall it's something like 10 lakh crore rupees, which is a 37% increase over last year. It is historic. Now, when there's such a big outlay, we need speed, we need gati, and we need shakti, we need power to be able to plan it quickly, implement it quickly, and to be able to deliver the kind of benefits which we look at in the logistics ecosystem for the supply chains, the interconnectivity of the warehouses, so on and so forth. So what exactly is Prime Minister's National Master Plan, which was launched for more effective planning of the infrastructure? All this investment going into infrastructure getting planned on the National Master Plan. So what exactly is it? It is, to put it very briefly, the National Master Plan of PM Gati Shakti is a GIS-enabled portal. So all the assets of the country, infrastructure assets, have been planned mapped on the portal. Also the forests, the mining area, all the social sector assets, every hospital, every school, in fact 100,000 godowns of CWC and FCI. And we are also going ahead with mapping the ICDs and the CFS centers. Why are we doing this? I hope all of you are with me. So why are we mapping all this? We have 1450 plus GIS data layers. Okay, we have them. Now what? Now we want to plan on this. So if I'm a railway person, like Sachin is from his experience, I want to plan a freight line, like he was saying, why don't we have more freight lines? We should strengthen the freight system. Okay, we are strengthening it. One example is the Bhadrak Vijayanagaram freight line, third freight line. Now that is in Odisha, right? Vijayanagaram is in Andhra Pradesh, right? So there's a third freight line. What did Indian Railways do when they started using these data layers? They looked at the coal producing area of Talcher, that is on the GIS platform. They looked at the steel manufacturing units in Kalinganagar adjoining. They saw the road network. They saw the existing railway. They saw how we can interconnect better. All this is visible on the Gati Shakti portal. You don't need to go to different ministries, ask for their data, plan it, plot it, go to your field. No. You sit on the GIS platform, you select your layers, you see them, you have apps and tools to plan. So they have planned the third freight line, giving connectivity for faster evacuation of coal, for iron ore and steel and coal movement, which is more efficient, interconnecting the steel units to the Paradip port. And this is through a mix of road, railway, and at Paradip, they have strengthened both the railway movement to Vijayanagaram and also the coastal ship movement all the way to Visakhapatnam, Chennai. So why does the coal move there? It goes to the thermal plants, it goes for manufacturing. And why should it go to thermal plants? Because you need more power. Why do you need more power? Because you're growing. You need to go to 2047. You want to be a developed nation. So this is how intermodality, need of the country for energy, everything is coming together on the Gati Shakti platform. I hope I could give you some sense of what is happening. I will give maybe one more example. I have a few favorite examples. I've already told you the Jogi Gopa. I've told you the Kalinganagar railway freight line. I'll give you one last example. And that is the solar energy which is being generated in Ladakh. Now, this is a very ambitious program where 13 GW of solar energy is being generated in Ladakh, but it is being transported, distributed all the way down till Kaithal in Haryana. So that is planned on the Gati Shakti, the entire distribution system. It is crossing, intersecting forest area. How do you have minimum intersection of forest area? Because you don't want to disturb the ecology. How do you plan on the existing expressways where large size vehicles would also be moving? You know, maybe Maruti cars are moving there, going to destination, to markets. How do you plan where the overhead cargo is also moving? You have to plan your power line, which is bringing power from Ladakh all the way down to Haryana. So all this has also been done on the Gati Shakti National Master Plan. Now, why did I speak so much about the National Master Plan? Because wherever your warehouses are, please identify the gaps. If there is a small gap to the expressway, or there's a gap with the railway line, or so on and so forth, to the inland waterway. How do you plan for that infrastructure? How do you request and ask the local authorities for better connectivity? How do you ask us for better connectivity? Because at the ministry level, we meet regularly. Every month, we have minimum 2 meetings with all infra ministries where we look at infrastructure gaps and we take up projects to fill up those infrastructure gaps. And the Honorable Finance Minister has sanctioned 75,000 crore rupees in this financial year alone to take up 100 critical infrastructure gaps, which will help in multimodal connectivity. I think I've already spoken a lot, and I would have also given you an idea about the master plan. I will not speak on the other things. You are aware the logistics policy lot will come up in your discussions later. That is basically about regulatory processes, services, how we can connect better to have a more efficient logistics ecosystem, whether it is by way of customs services or the timeliness of shipments, we've been talking about it, or the other technology-driven interventions. How do you have paperless processes? How you bring together the various ministries onto one single digital gateway, which is the ULIP. Many of you are using it. And I would also very briefly mention the logistics data bank, whereby 100%, I think many of you may be participating in that, 100% EXIM containers of the country are being tracked through RFID technology. Big data analytics is giving us feedback on the speed analysis, the movement of those containers through various states, what is the state of the roads, what is the productivity of the ports, what is the dwell time at the ports, and how this is actually, this kind of tracking is helping us improve our systems. And in the Logistics Performance Index of the World Bank 2023, India has jumped from 44th to 38th position out of 139 countries, and we are working to do even better. I would close here, but I will also let you know that I like to participate in as many events of industry associations as I can. Yesterday I was at the Cargo Summit. Today I'm here because it's always fruitful, meaningful, and helps us work better when we hear you. So while I will not be here for the other 2 sessions, but I would request Neerja and Sachin to please give us feedback. We have a meeting of Services Improvement Group where business associations connect with us every 2 weeks. Would like to know more. And when we connect, we learn from each other. I would end with just one thought. I have believed in my public life, whether I was collector of Naxal prone at that point in time district in Andhra Pradesh or otherwise. It's when all of us perform our own duty, whether we are in the private sector or public sector, that everything comes together and we are able to change the world for the better. So whatever you do, wherever you are, wherever we are, all of us, if we perform our work sincerely and as per the overall vision, I'm sure we will take our country forward as per the aspirations for 2047. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your inspiring address. I would now request Ms. Neerja Singh, Senior Director, FICCI.
Video ready?
So, okay, yes.
India is swiftly advancing on the path of Amrit Kaal, laying the foundation for the next 25 years. The GIS-based PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan is instrumental in accelerating the pace of work. This integrated approach is accelerating progress through its 6 pillars: comprehensiveness, prioritization, optimization, synchronization, analytical and dynamic. And through this, the overall work speed has accelerated. On this integrated portal, more than 1,463 data layers are available and more than 50 planning tools are working. Due to the presence of multiple data layers on GIS-based National Master Plan, certain tasks have been simplified in planning like coordination, using multi-level review for land acquisition, digitized NOC approvals, approval from railways and power grid, and many other such tasks have become easy. For the overall project, there has been a reduction in the cost and time due to usage of PM Gati Shakti in coastal shipping, inland waterways, and in railways. There has been an overall reduction in carbon footprint, and overall DPR preparation has become faster. In recent years, the PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan has reached unprecedented heights in the field of infrastructure. Within the PM Gati Shakti Master Plan, the Network Planning Group of the Government of India has evaluated projects worth 5.24 lakh crore rupees and has evaluated 80 major infrastructure projects encompassing railways, road, ports and more. These projects in terms of enhancing multimodal connectivity, common right-of-way, minimizing ecological impact through optimized alignments, expedited land acquisition and clearances guided by the principles of the Gati Shakti Master Plan. The projects are operating at maximum efficiency, creating the new milestones in the field of infrastructure and development. Some of these projects are Jogi Khopa, construction 4-lane bridge across river Brahmaputra. Under PM Gati Shakti, the construction of this project will reduce both distance and time of travel. The alignment of Silchar-Jiribam-Imphal gas pipeline, planned by the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, is part of the Northeast Gas Grid. These 5 projects will reduce the length by 42 kilometers and save 169 crore rupees overall. The planning of the Green Energy Corridor from Ladakh to Kaithal in Haryana is a crucial step in reaching the target of 500 gigawatt capacity from non-fossil fuels by 2030 through the PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan. The Pune-Bengaluru Expressway is a high-speed corridor connecting 13 economic centers for high-speed freight movement. Using PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan on this route, forest area intersection has been reduced by 19%. The Taranga Hill Ambaji Abu Road Broad Gauge New Railway Line project benefited from the PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan, streamlining the land acquisition process. Under the PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan, Samruddhi Mahamarg in Maharashtra, 4G coverage in 30,000 villages of India, disaster management in flood-affected areas, suitable locations for Anganwadis in Gujarat, schools in backward villages through Pahunch portals in Uttar Pradesh, and such works of social infrastructure development are being carried out across the country. The PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan, GIS-based portal, is propelling India towards rapid modernization, fully prepared and determined to achieve the vision of a developed India by 2047.
I would now like to invite Ms. Neerja Singh, Senior Director of FICCI, to propose the formal vote of thanks.
Good morning. Indeed, my proud privilege to express my gratitude for all of you to be present here today. My special thank you to Ms. Sumita Davra. I'm extremely grateful for your kind presence. I'm aware you have a service improvement group meeting immediately after this, and that's why I'll keep it very short and not hold you for long. It's been encouraging to hear from our other speakers on the dais, Mr. Manoj Kumar and Mr. Anil Kumar Singh. I'm so sorry, Anil Kumar Singh. We absolutely did not mind your extending for a couple of minutes, because what you said is very, very relevant and can be taken by the industry forward. And we would try to reach out to the industry and see how we can work with your organization to take it forward. The summit indeed today is going to be an excellent platform for networking, for meeting industry experts, interacting with the government, bringing up your points. We have some very good session lined up for you during the day. Please take advantage and benefit from what we have done for you. Mr. Bhanushali, of course, our very own advisor of FICCI Committee on Logistics. We're extremely grateful for your presence and, of course, guiding us throughout the year in terms of our deliverables. I would fail in my duty if I forget to thank the people who made this event happen, our sponsors, logistics partner DP World, Gold partner JM Bakshi, associate partner Gear India, TVS Industries and Logistics Parks Limited, and Safe Express Private Limited. Knowledge partner Grant Thornton. We are delighted to release this report, and this report will be available to you. We will mail the link where you can access the report shortly. With this, we close the inaugural session and move on immediately to the next technical session after a short tea break. The special secretary has to leave for another meeting, and we're already 5 minutes late.
What Sumita is saying is that we can take 2 questions. So let's limit only to 2 questions. We can start with you. The first question.
I was just going through the Keynote report 2122 that says why there is a reason the total number of units, active units reduced from 4256 to 2516 units. Is there any strict rules for that?
What exactly do you mean by units? Are you talking about
The registered active units.
registered
Active units.
active units?
Reduced.
Well, you see,
Is this due to tighten norms or?
I'll ask a question. We register warehouses for a period of 5 years. And the registration also expires after 5 years. They may not renew. Now, the nature of the industry is such that warehouses are leased. It's by and large a leasing industry, as people here would bear me out. So sometimes what happens is that a warehouse is leased and they require WDRA registration for certain activities, like as I mentioned in my speech, for storing FCI goods. They also require it for settling trade on the commodity exchanges in SEBI. Now, if they are getting out of the commodity exchange trade, they no longer require WDRA registration. So they would not re-register. This would lead to a certain fall in registration. But having said that, let me also say that over the last 10 years, we have been in existence, 13 years, registration has been increasing, particularly for the last 2 years, because of a variety of factors. Now we have already crossed 4,500 warehouses. And we deal with the agricultural sector only as of now. We have notified metallic goods also, metals also, but then we have not yet started implementing it. Now, with regard to agricultural goods, the latest NABARD survey on geotagging of warehouses says that there are 1,09,000 agricultural warehouses in the country, out of which 9,000 are defunct. So we have a figure of 1 lakh. And incidentally, we register only public warehouses. That is warehouses where any member of the public can go and deposit their goods. We don't register captive warehouses belonging to a private party or a company like FCI and so on. We register public warehouses. Out of the 1 lakh warehouses, we understand that there are about 40,000 public warehouses. So that means in effect, we have registered about slightly about 9,000 or 10% of the warehousing market. The registration is not mandatory, but we make all efforts to register more warehouses.
Small example, CWC.
Yes.
Is the total number of units reduced from 489 to 344?
Yes.
Any particular reason?
No, that I would not be able to give you a specific reply to that, but I can hazard a guess. Perhaps some of these CWC warehouses, Amit may bear me out, could be leased warehouses. You have leased warehouses also? Yeah, we have. So in case they de-lease a warehouse, then they no longer have to register with us. So that warehouse goes off my radar. So that is the reason. So let us look at the overall picture. The overall picture is that our growth in registration has been humongous. It's still small, but the growth rates have been good in the last 2-3 years after in the post-COVID period. During the COVID period, of course, there was...
Next, somebody else.
One
more person.
My special
we may have to limit to one question because we have others wanting to ask also, and we are very limited. Please.
Just last one question, very important. My last question to Madam Sumita, it's I need your attention, please. Yes, I understand. Yeah, you should encourage the private sector to register with the WDRA. There should be some policy to register with the, because there is no.
Sir, we will
they
request
already are.
you
We
to
all
please
work in
share the
tandem.
note and we will take it to them. But in this room, we might have to give others also. Please, sir.
This question is Sumitaji for you. My name is Manu Bhalla, President of Warehousing Association. So, ma'am, you mentioned a point that if there is any request to connect with, let's say, some of the infrastructure planning, so how can the private sector reach out to, let's say, DPIIT? Would it be through e-logs or any other form?
So, you are the president of the Warehousing Association, right? Yeah. President, Chairman, whatever, I hope I got it. Yes. I would request you if you could give us a list of all the private warehouses. We will map it on the Gati Shakti portal for you. We will also see which are we will have probably a stage-wise approach, which are the bigger ones, where there's more aggregation, disaggregation happening, and study the infra gaps. We'll demonstrate it to you. We'll call your members. We'll show you the mapping we've done, what infra gaps. We'll talk to you. We'll call the infra ministries and the states which take up those roads and probably try to, get those things done.
So, I'll connect with you offline. I know you're in a
Yes.
hurry.
No, I mean, I'm listening to you, and we would look forward to doing this.
Yes. Also, ma'am, there are certain sectors, for example, which have been declared as logistics zones or logistics parks, and now the railways are all moving towards double stack trains. So there are only few lines which are actually having double stack. So really to get the complete benefit, right? So there may be an opportunity through Gati Shakti to understand, where are the lines that we can have double stack, and those parks, not only the MMLP, the other
Yes.
logistics parks can also kind of.
Absolutely.
So-
Would you like to put this on e-logs?
Yeah, ma'am. So I'll actually come and meet you. I'm spending
please.
for a long time.
And if you put it on
Yes.
e-logs, it becomes institutionalized, irrespective of.
Ma'am, there are some other issues
Please come.
we've posted
I'll
on
look
e-logs,
Right.
but ma'am,
Right.
responses are.
And no,
taking
as far
time.
as e-log is concerned, Vicky can vouch for it. We have been very regular in this
Yeah,
meetings.
but- Right.
And whenever we log in, this is the fastest resolution to any of your concerns that the ministry is
There's
doing with
still a
us.
couple of pending from our
Yes, I
association.
know, because you know what happened? Ever since we started e-logs a couple of months back, we had only 15 issues. But the minute issues started getting resolved, we had 60 issues in 2 weeks. So that is why, but we are very sincere, we are committed, and today is our next meeting, and we need people like you to keep on goading us to work. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dignitaries. May I request all the inaugural session dignitaries to please pose for one group photograph. Ladies and gentlemen, as the dignitaries depart, please note that we will not be breaking for tea in the interest of time. Please give us couple of minutes for the housekeeping arrangements, and we will immediately start with the business session 1 on building warehouses for the future, key development and opportunities.
Requesting everyone to kindly remain seated. We are starting the business session 1 in 2 minutes. Shampa. Requesting everyone to kindly remain seated. We are starting the business session 1 on building warehouses for the future, key developments and opportunities. I am pleased to invite our distinguished dignitaries for this session to kindly join the dais. Mr. Prakash Gaur, CEO, National Highways Logistics Management Limited. Mr. Prakash Gaur, CEO, National Highway Logistics Management Limited. Mr. Sachin Bhanushali, Advisor, FICCI Logistics Committee and former CEO, Gateway District Parks Limited. Mr. Siddharth Kasturia, Executive Vice President, Warehousing and Logistics, GMR Group. Mr. Manikandan Ramachandran, Chief Operating Officer, TVS Industrial and Logistics Parks. Mr. Neeraj Yadav, Chief Manager, Supply Chain, JK Tire Industries Limited. May I request the moderator of this session, Mr. Tejendra Gupta, Partner, Grant Thornton Bharat LLP, to kindly join the dais. Yeah. Over to you, Mr. Gupta.
A very good morning to all of you. So my name is Tejendra Gupta. I'm a partner with Grant Thornton Bharat Limited, and I deal with solutions in the logistics port sector for the firm. Before I start, let me introduce our esteemed panelists for the discussion today. We have Mr. Prakash Gaur with us, who is the CEO of National Highway Logistics Limited. Mr. Gaur has over 2 decades of rich and varied experience in the logistics and planning space. Besides sectoral involvement in infrastructure and logistics planning, Mr. Gaur has research and academic experience in the development of ports and maritime logistics, and also has led various prestigious engagements, work in the urban infrastructure and development projects with the government of Gujarat and Andhra Pradesh as well. So welcome Mr. Gaur to the session. Then we have Mr. Sachin Bhanushali, who is the advisor of FICCI Logistics Committee. I think we have already heard you, sir. Mr. Bhanushali has almost 35 years of experience. He's a former CEO of Gateway District Parks, with a distinguished career in the public sector with appointments with the Indian Railways and Concor. Mr. Bhanushali became one of the founders of the Gateway Rail brand, of which he was the CEO in 2018. Welcome, Bhanushali, sir. Then we have Mr. Siddharth Kasturia, who is the Executive Vice President of Warehousing and Logistics with the GMR Group. He has got about 20 years, more than 20 years of experience in the private logistics sector. Well-known name, with the ranks of the Indian logistics and supply chain sector from 1990s to become one of its well-known leaders in this space. And he started with the National Defense Academy. Mr. Kasturia is still going strong with the GMR Group. Thank you. Welcome to the session, Mr. Kasturia. We have Mr. Manikandan Ramachandranji, who is the Chief Operating Officer of TVS Industrial and Logistics Park, with more than 18 years of experience in the warehousing and logistics industry. Mr. Ramachandran is a grad of the prestigious IIT Chennai, where he did his Masters in Construction Management. And over the years, Mr. Ramachandran has gained valuable experience in setting up educational, health and warehousing infrastructure. Welcome, Mr. Ramachandranji, to the session. And finally, we have Mr. Neeraj Yadav, who is the Chief Manager Supply Chain from JK Tires and Industries, and he has more than 23 years of experience in the supply chain and logistics function across various business verticals and industries all over the nation. So I'll just take a minute before we start to set the context. Since morning, we have heard a lot from our senior dignitaries on the economy is on track to be the 3rd largest economy by 2027. And to do that, the production numbers have to go up. The industrial production of the country has to go up, and there are multiple initiatives like Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, and PLI schemes, etc., which is helping in a big way to increase the industrial production within the state. If I quote the numbers, at the moment it is in the range of around 17% when it comes to contribution to the GDP, and we are on road to take that number to almost like 25% by 2025 is what the government says. And at the same time, to be able to achieve that target, the export numbers has to go up. I mean, if I quote, it's in the range of $447 billion when I talk about the merchandise exports right now. And this has to double if we want to achieve what we want to by 2027. And logistics is going to play a critical role in this particular space. And for that to happen, it's very important that, with the 10 to 12% year-on-year growth of logistics, and warehousing in that particular space is growing at a rate of 15.64% at a CAGR growth rate. There are opportunities in the sector and there are challenges as well. On that particular note, I like to open the discussion to our esteemed panelist. And may I invite Mr. Bhanushali, sir, to start and share his views that what are the challenges, what are the opportunities that he foresees in the warehousing space on his starting comments in this session. Bhanushali, so over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Tejinder Gupta. It's a pleasure to be a part of the first session, first of the 2 sessions today. The answer to the question that you asked is very simple. To start with, land is the issue. The importance of having warehousing capabilities in urban and semi-urban areas is becoming more and more important and simultaneously more and more difficult. The reason for this is that we do not have a state-assisted mechanism for acquisition of land, even though we have development plans for each of the towns and cities. which specifically earmark transportation and warehousing zones as a part of the development of that region. If we go slightly deeper into this aspect of non-availability of land through a state-assisted mechanism, the industry as a subject, primarily from an execution point of view, as per the 7th schedule of the Constitution of India, lies largely with the state governments. And state governments have an organized method of acquisition of land for development of industrial estates in order to promote manufacturing activity, both for industrial purpose as well as for consumer sector. However, a large industrial warehousing park, which incorporates public warehousing particularly, is not an integral part of this scheme of things as far as the state government's industry plans are concerned. This is getting addressed to some extent by way of logistics policies, which are now being both standardized and released by various state governments. And now I think we have more than 20 state governments with a pronouncement of a standardized logistics policy, which does address this. However, even today, if let's say a industrial warehousing company wants to acquire land for the purpose of development of a dry bulk, liquid bulk, and a break bulk, and a containerized warehousing facility as an integrated complex, there is no such scope which is available unless the industrial development corporation of a state government offers this as a part of bidding of real estate which is available with them at any of the real estates. This land is not available. I think that is the first and foremost important part. Second, of course, is standardization. The standardization part of it is getting addressed over a period of time. There is a great deal of self-regulation which is coming in from the industry as far as standardization is concerned. And particularly if we look at retail, the growth in retail in India has resulted into demand for retail warehousing reaching a certain level where the inflection point has already been reached. People are talking in terms of millions of square feet of warehousing space. The third component which I consider, and I'm not an expert, but in fact we have experts like Mr. Manu Bhalla who are here who can endorse it, is that we still lag behind in terms of manpower as well as processes. So one of the heartening thing which was mentioned by Mr. T.K. Manoj Kumar was that there has been a shift from non-regulated warehousing to regulated warehousing, at least in the agri space. And now there is possibility of storage of agriculture produce in warehouses, and which can be transferred by way of negotiable instrument exchange. I think these processes need to enter into particularly commodities in order to make the market more accessible as well as widespread across India. I hope I have been able to address the question that you had fielded to me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. God, can I request you to have your initial comments on this?
Thank you. Good morning to you all. It's always a pleasure to come to organization like FICCI, and I'm thankful for FICCI for inviting us, especially when organization like ours offers a lot of opportunities for all the FICCI members. So it's much thankful to me to give in this platform. You heard Madam in the morning what she spoke about the multimodalities. Before I come to my point, I would just like to respond to Mr. Sachin, what he raised a few concerns in terms of development of warehousing and multimodalities. This organization is being created by the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, specific for this purpose, to solve these kind of problems. So as Madam mentioned in the morning, that Government of India is developing 35 multimodal logistics parks under the overall Bharatmala program. Their objective was to increase the logistics efficiencies and reduce the logistics cost. And the location of these 35 MMLPs are being designed keeping in mind the role, the rail, the road, and the economic nodes and economic corridors, and how the efficiency will come where aggregation of cargo will happen and the modal shift will happen. because biggest challenge of India is that we have a tilted modal share towards the roadside. Though I come from the road ministries, but my job is to increase the share of the railways. That's a target has been given to me. And first, let me give you an update what we are doing it out of these 35 multimodalized parks, which we are talking since quite long time, is under implementations. And last year, as Madam mentioned, that we already awarded the 4 MMLPs, which includes the Jogi Upa, which is under construction. Now Chennai is also going for construction. That's already under PPP. Bangalore and Indore. And this year, we are looking for another 6 MMLPs for where the 2 tenders has already been floated. Now the point comes is what this multimodalities is. I'm sure experts sitting here, they know about that thing is, but the more important, interesting for you is what the model is and how the industry can really be partner and participated in this thing is. So Sachin, the biggest challenge, what I'm sure you must have experienced in your long span of career, that for the private sector, it's very difficult. Challenges, first of all, aggregating the land and then getting all the approvals and then getting all the connectivities, be it railways, be it highways, and this thing is. So what government has done this time, what I always say in a lighter note, that we have taken all your pain point and you take your all payment points. So we are trying to help you in that way. So what we are doing is the long gestation assets, which is land, the railway, the highways, and all approval clearances, which we are offering to the market and developing this on a PPP basis. When a PPP is purely a public-private partnership, DBFOT basis, design, build, operate, finance, transfer basis. So what government is doing is government is providing the aggregated land at a very strategic. Now the question was coming is, in fact, in another session we are discussing the question is where this locations is, because location of these MMLPs becomes very, very critical thing is, because our objective is to increase the cargo efficiencies and reduce the logistics cost, not the other thing is. So first of all, at the national master plan, these 35 have been identified on the economic corridor. Then when we do the micro level study, we see if suppose Bangalore is identified or Chennai for that matter identified or Pune and so on and so forth is, we look for where the cargo flow is there. We also see how far this from the railway network thing is, from the major lines for the moment we finish. How far this will be from the highways thing is. And more important comes when you go to PPP basis is that the land should also not become the unaffordable, because the biggest challenge comes, so you will appreciate in private sectors, when you start doing trading off, if you want to develop these parks near to the economic centers, the land become unaffordable. And then projects start unviable. You are not able to, your objective is to increase the efficiency of the car logistics, but it starts happening the other ways. So we are developing this in a manner which does the trade-off between all that and start developing these facilities. We are providing this like a 45-year concession. Such a long concession not been given as of now, to the best of my knowledge in the industries, by the government. So it's a 45-year concessions, and development period is 15 years. So where industry can develop the entire park in 15 years. What we expect from the industry is the phase 1 is to be operationalized within 2 years time. And how we define the phase 1 is that you, out of total investment, 1/3 of the investment is to be made by within 2 years time. So we are giving a lot of flexibility to the industries, but also we have a monitoring mechanism how the discipline comes in delivering these things. When I say flexibilities, as I mentioned, when we are monitoring, you are saying 1/3 of the investment has to be made in the phase 1. But we give the basic master plan, and the industry has a flexibility to improvise and bring the value engineering. Because as an industry developers, you know better what product will flow in which kind. I, based on my studies, may come up, okay, this is my master plan, these are my cargo component, which we think is. But you will have flexibilities how to improvise. But when you are putting your hard money into you will ensure that really being used by the end customers. So there is a lot of opportunities for the private sector to come. I request the entire industry fraternities to come forward, because I'm still seeing, to be very frank, is this industry is very fragmented. Sorry to say, you have a warehousing player, you have a terminal operator, you have a developer, you have a supply chain, you have a pure logistics player in this thing. So when I go to the multimodal supply, people ask that this question is being delivered now. The policy gives the clarity on this thing is what the multimodality is, and people say, okay, sir, we do only the railway terminal parts. That is our expertise. I don't name few people. Then people say, okay, we are only the warehousing players. That is why we have allowed even the consortium to come and put together. This thing is up to 4 consortiums can and partner to this thing is. But my request to the industry is that industry need to come forward, make it. Sorry, one more last thing I want to highlight here, which I am facing a challenge per se. We all go and say, when we go to Europe, this has been built. When we go to China, the kind of scale we have built it. But when we come to India, we say, what are we doing? And we start cursing ourselves. When we start planning these parks, nobody understands better than the Ministry of Road Transport, because they have seen the entire cycle. Starting from 4 lane, now we are going to 6 lane and 8 lane and 12 lanes are being planned. If you see the Delhi-Mumbai Expressway, it's been constructed for 8 lane but planned for 12 lane, knowingly that in 10, 12 years, 15 years, it will be congested. The scale, what point which I am trying to say, logistics is nothing but economies of scale and economic scope. The scale becomes very important. Here my request to the industry, this thing is, if we are coming forward, we are acquiring that land, we're looking is at least when we are going 45, we are consuming, you're talking half a century. Almost 2 generations one is looking is to develop these parks. So we need to really see a long-term planning from the industry per se, not just a 5 or 10 year planning. This thing is should not happen in 10, 12 years. You start realizing of these parks we built and this is now congested or overcrowded and come in the cities, and then the land use, another impact starts coming to this thing is. So please start thinking slightly in a longer term. This thing is, we are coming 2 steps forward, you also come 1 step forward, and at least thinks that we build something good for the next generations, which industry can really and people can really appreciate for that things. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those wonderful points. Can I request Mr. Ramachandran to have his initial comments on how big is this opportunity on warehousing, and what is his experience on the challenges that are there persisting in the industry that we need to look up to? Your initial thoughts, sir.
Yeah, so in terms of a market, warehousing market, especially we are focusing on private players. And the market is something like we have been seeing a healthy 15% year-on-year growth, but kind of growth which our company at least is seeing is a 30% plus year-on-year growth. And the growth is something fueled by not only that just an e-commerce industry, I would say. It is now kind of more focused on players who has actually started from unorganized kind of players who have developed warehouses which is not a grade A facility, and totally now they have understood that it is grade A. When we say grade A, the definition of grade A has slightly got distorted, I would say. It is not only about the facility infrastructure or anything, it is more about the compliances what we carry, the access what we give to the clients for 24/7 operations, how it is able to reach the hubs and the spokes. So this is something I would say in a broad level is going to be the game changer. So now all the players has understood that these factors has becoming very critical, and now they have started moving towards this grade A facility. In fact, what we have seen in the recent is a lot of manufacturing customers, they don't want to have their warehousing, especially warehousing for their raw materials inside their facility. Especially for non-core operations, they just want to focus for core operations. So these things are naturally like kind of served from outside, and the warehouses is becoming a cluster where a lot of manufacturing is fueling the growth. And in fact, we have seen the FMCG players, FMCD, who are trying to consolidate, move to a compliant facilities, and there are companies which is also kind of focusing on sub-assembly, like they don't want to carry all these things in their facility, where they can just focus their core business and they can move the sub-assembly to the warehousing area. And the last thing I would say is that in-city distribution, the consumption center has become more, and the purchasing power has become more from the middle class, and the demand also has grown, like in terms of the time of delivery. So it is becoming imperative that the last mile delivery is going to be a big challenge, And this is something now which is getting addressed through in-city distribution centers. In fact, what is happening is, there are facilities like the theaters and whatever the defunct malls is getting converted, or the erstwhile brownfield facilities are getting converted as a compliant warehouses, which suits the in-city distribution. Coming to the challenges, the challenges again, like we will again echo the same sentiment which everyone says. Land is becoming the biggest challenge everywhere, and getting land, crossing all the legal hurdles, as well as the kind of specific micro market, because this is more dependent on the micro market as well and the market itself. So that is becoming the biggest challenge in terms of warehousing sector. And the second thing is, like, there is a change in terms of specifications also. We have been treating that warehouses as grade A, and we have certain framework which we have created. But what we are seeing is now that grade A is moving towards, I would say, there is nothing coined as of now. So it can become grade A plus or A plus plus. The customers has understood that cubic meter volume is something is more important, and now they think that instead of going for a standard warehouse, if they can go for a warehouse which is something going to create more volume, so that the real estate cost can come down, and this will help them in terms of like store more volumes and kind of better operational efficiency. But the challenge is like the height per se is having a regulation, and this regulation is again kind of causing a little challenge, I would say. Once you cross that 15 meter 15.5 meter mark, then it goes to multi-story building warehouse. So that is where again there is a challenge which is coming into the play. If that is something addressed, I think the warehouses are going to change in the future in terms of the specification, everything.
Thank you, sir. Interestingly, last year in that 50 plus million transactions, 39% were from the 3PL and 13% from the e-com.
Yeah.
However, that sounds yes. So may I request Mr. Kusturia, if you can also please have your views, initial views on the opportunity that exists and the challenges. Your initial comment, sir.
Thank you. First of all, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to take everyone a little back. Sachin and myself have had the opportunity of knowing each other for over a decade now, and we were together sitting in Mr. Gadkari's office way back in 2015, 16, 17, those years, when this national logistics policy drafting was happening, right? Please remind me if I'm going wrong by years. It's been some time, and this is a business forum, and I would focus straightway on the business point without going left right. One of the most major subject or the reason that this logistics policy or this initiative, excellent and superlative initiative which was done by the government and is still going on, and there is so much has happened and so many things have happened. The basic fundamental that this was brought in was to reduce the logistics cost. Everything else is a subsidiary to it. I remember in the discussions we had a lot of industry players, the DHLs and these Safe Expresses and etc. Everybody on board, and I very clearly remember the task written on the board was bring it down from 14 to 9%. This is my memory from, I think, 2016 middle, and we are almost 6-7 years down the line. Like any business head would look at it, I would like to look back and see where have we reached from 14 today. Where are we? Have we achieved it? I'm sure most of us will agree over here that we have not. It may sound a little negative, but fact is we have not achieved there. The reason behind that are several. I think if we focus on that part and we see that what are the things that we have missed, nobody is saying that nothing has been done. There are so much has been done. India is a very diversified, very large and a very complex country. We are not like Europe, we are not like China, we are not like United States where things are heavily streamlined and things happen very quickly. Our country is what it is, and we are proud of that. The fact of the whole thing is, the largest component to reduce your cost was to shift the road traffic to the rail. I think that's one subject which, apart from, I will not speak about the land and things, because I think Sachinji and all of us have already spoken about land. I come from a developing, as a developer, GMR being the largest developer in this country. We face these land issues all over the place, so I will not get into details. We've already spoken about it. But what is I think we have missed out is, we built excellent roads, we built excellent highways, we created connectivities, we made transportation faster. Our trucks are moving. Delhi, Bombay, I'm just giving an example. Delhi, Bombay, I remember in 17 used to be a 4-day, 5-day transit. Today it has come down to 2.5 days, 2 days transit, something like that. We've done a fabulous job there, but has our cost gone down? I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, it has not. Our cost still stands there. Not because the efficiencies has improved, but our costs are still high. Our costs are high not because of anything else, because we are still on the road. We have not switched to the rail. He has been in the rail cargo business, and he is much better person than me to talk about it. But fact of the whole thing is, we have not been able to transform our railway network and operational systems and requirements and regulations to build in domestic cargo movement. What we have just focused ourselves is the core of coal and steel, etc., and we have just remained there. All right?
Absolutely.
We've just remained there. We have not worked, and that's all of us. It's not A or B or Z. That's not the point. The point is, we all must, as basic human beings, learn from our own shortfalls. And our own shortfall is we've not focused on that. I think that's one thing which I would recommend the dignitaries on the table. I think we need to put up that point and bring it up strongly, that I think we have somewhere lost that small focus of bringing from 14 to 9. That 5% cut, the 40 to 45% of that comes out of transfer of cargo from the road to the railway network, which has not happened. There are challenges, we are not denying that. We know what the challenges are, but I think though we have lost some number of years in between from the point of view of COVID and etc., but I think that's one focus we need to work on. Another point that I will just add on to what Mr. Gaur said, and Sachin also mentioned about land, it's just a thought. I'm not saying that's the best way of doing it, but it's just a thought. I'm just throwing it as a thought to everyone to think about it, and maybe the people in the right positions and who have the controls can think about the manner in which, okay, let's put one step behind. Multimodal logistics park, when we talk multi-modes, the largest multi-mode we talk about is the rail and the roadways, both working together and have some kind of a conjunction or a point or a transfer point which can have consolidation activities, EXIM activities, domestic activities, and the form of an MMLP. That's a basic philosophy. What I am trying to say over here is, we have done the highways, national highways, a national asset. It works through the central control. Railways, central asset, works through the central control. But because the land is a state subject, therefore the MMLP subject has gone to the states. Some of the states have done a fabulous job, no doubt about that, but then some of the states are lagging far behind. That also is a fact. So that's where what my suggestion over here is, sir, can we, it's a thought process, can we have the railways, the highways and the MMLP come on a national grid under the national ownership? Again, I'm saying it's just a question whether we can do it or we cannot do it, what are the modalities, how it can be done, or how it will help us. It will help us big time, that all of us agree. I don't think there is anyone, I can see a lot of faces nodding over here. But I'm just putting a thought process on the table. Maybe we can do something about that. So these are the two main things which I think should help us in not forgetting our main objective that we started, what we all of us started, and the government with, thank you for the government who have done so much of work on this, to bring the cost down. I think that's where the crux lies of taking our country to, if you remember, we were talking about 2030 those days, but now it has gone to 2047. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. If I can, with your permission, if I can bring in two aspects of the phenomena here. And one of the points that you had asked me was that what are the difficulties with respect to this sector is concerned. There is another paradox that we need to understand here. On one hand, we are saying that our logistics cost is higher, which also means that the cost of each of the components is higher. Simultaneously, the yield of this industry is not impressive. The return on capital employed in warehousing sector continues to be elusive. And that is why, in spite of big names like Blackstone having invested in real estate spaces as far as warehousing spaces are concerned, we still don't see the numbers showing up. And that is a hindrance for further additional infusion of capital, which is not coming in. The second component, which is more or less a combination of my response to both Mr. Kasturi and Mr. Gaur is concerned, is that while there are 3,800 industrial parks in India, we are looking at multimodal logistics park less than 50. I don't think it works like that. If we have 3,800 industrial parks across India, we need similar number of warehousing spaces adjacent to the manufacturing activity, so that there is no two-stage transportation involved. You primarily produce and keep it there, and then take it directly from a distribution chain point of view to the regional distribution location, particularly as I mentioned earlier, with GST having helped us eliminate the interstate barriers, we should be able to take to the regional distribution centers from where fulfillment logistics can take place directly or through mother warehouses. The point which Mr. Kasturia made with respect to shift of modal shift from road to rail is extremely important component of reducing the logistics cost is concerned. But that is not only about transportation cost. As I mentioned to you earlier at the inaugural session, is that unless the transit time of rail comes down significantly and make your transit speedy and reliable, the level of inventory which is maintained by industry is not going to come down. And level of inventory is what is jacking up our logistics cost rather than the road transportation or rail transportation cost. So these are the 2 points which I thought that as supplementary points would make, I would say, relevant space in the discussion that we have today.
I completely agree with you, sir. I think not only from the transportation side, but on the storage side also, the operational efficiency has to go up. You want to add a point, sir?
Yes. I want to maybe respond to these 2 points especially. I fully agree, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, that my job is to, though I come from the road ministry, but to shift to the rail, then only this will achieve it. So there are 2 things is happening, which maybe not be aware, rather 3 I would say. First of all, PM Gati Shakti, I'm sure Madam has explained in the first session, has really helped us a lot in doing that. Because what happened is, now when we plan our projects, earlier the ministry used to work in silos. So this PM Gati Shakti approach has broken the silos, and all 16 line ministries, which is economic ministry, the infrastructure ministries, who works together for any project what we are doing. Scale though at 500 crore has been capped, but for a smaller project also we go there to take this. So what helps is, especially in last mile connectivity, you are able to do it. One thing in the you mentioned about the Delhi-Mumbai, now with the Delhi-Mumbai Expressway, the 2.5 days will become 24 hours now. That speed will come, especially for the cargo per se. But on the railway side, I'm not sure whether you are fully aware about that. The DFC is doing quite a fabulous job doing this, because I've seen recently in various discussions and updations, and not only that, the larger network, what the Western Eastern Freight Corridor, what they are building it. What we are also working together is that MMLPs and these are logistics facilities. How do we really connect? Because again, the last mile connectivity become important, be it rail or be it road. This thing is. But then also comes the factor of reliability, what you rightly said in the railway. It's not about the railway line you put in, whether I am getting my wreck in schedule, whether I have because if I'm not able to reach just in time, then my cost will not come down unless I go there.
I agree. Transit assurance is a major issue.
I think we industry and we need to work together for this, because I also come to such platform to get a lot of learning, so we can improvise in a policy and working, and next time we can always go back to this thing is. Next point is about the MLP in warehousing per se. So what MLPs we are building, it's just a hub and spoke model. So it's not limiting to 35 per se. This 35 number is phase 1. We're going to increase further, number 1. But number 2, as a Ministry of Road Transport, we are also developing warehousing zones. So I'm sure all of you must be aware that we are building the ring roads almost around every city we have. Right. So what we have come up with the policy is that around the ring road, the large commercial vehicles should not be entering to the road. This is also looking a model of decongesting the cities from the urban transportation point of view. So a smaller warehousing centers can be created. When I say smaller, meaning I'm comparing from the MMLP, not from the smaller. That's by this thing. These are also range of, if I have to give a scale into land, 10, 15, 20 acres kind of thing is where the cargo can be offloaded, and then in a smaller or the sustainable mode, it can be distributed. This thing is, so all that fulfillment centers and regional distribution centers are also being worked in a very planned manner. But when I say planned manner, you do, but it's not just theoretical planning which happens. This thing is let me give you an example of Bangalore. When we start planning the MMLP Bangalore, we know that we are coming a road called STRR. People are familiar with Bangalore. Bangalore already a router ring road. Then there is a super outer satellite township ring road, what we call it, which connecting 8 satellite towns of Bangalore. This thing will be. So abutting that and the expressway which is coming there, this is on that borderline and the main railway line that has been planned. And just 20 kilometers from the Tumkur Nigdig industrial node, which is also being planned. So now when we plan our logistics parks, we also have our understanding with the NICDIC that wherever you will plan the logistics by the industrial nodes or economic nodes, we will plan work on the logistics phase. So now with this PM Gati, I think is helping us a lot in working together, and that is being done. But yeah, I know that's taking time, but these are infrastructure sectors. We have seen unprecedented growth in highways. You will see in this also. Now we have start rolling.
Thank you so much, sir. May I also request Mr. Yadav to have his views here now, especially the technology plays a very important role in enhancing the operational efficiencies of the warehouses and even on the transportation side. From your experience, Mr. Yadav, if you can throw some light on your views around this.
Yeah, thank you. And on the technology front, I think it is a main driver. It has been doing wonders since the invention of fire, invention of wheel. And today we are in an age where you name it, whatever issues you are facing, and technology will be ready with a solution. So just to give you some examples, like forecasting and these things have become a cliche now. More or less everybody is using some sort of a tool to do that sort of a thing. TMS, transport management system. So I'm talking from a user standpoint. So I come from JK Tyre, and I'm sharing my views from how a user thinks on the technology part. So WMS is there. In WMS, like today, the model has evolved to such a degree that tomorrow, day after tomorrow, how many manpowers might be needed. Because it is linked to my transport management system, it can check how many trucks will be expected to reach in another 2 days, and the planning can be done accordingly. So, and one interesting thing is digital twins, which we are seeing a lot. So it's like you are playing in dark. Everybody is aware of there are shortcomings, but getting a feedback on your shortcomings is really difficult. Someone comes to me and says, Neeraj, there is so and so issue in your warehouse. I'll not be very happy taking that sort of a feedback, but in a digital twin, you can always be ready, and you are playing it in dark. Nobody else is aware, but you can see how your operations are going on and where there can be an issue without everybody in the organization coming to know about it. So you can take preventive and proactive action on that front. And nowadays, even we are hearing a lot about IBP, integrated business planning. So this is something like you have kind of a war room. There are 90 screens in front of you. So I have been to one of those demos, and they integrate all your systems. So earlier there used to be a single ERP, but now there are multiple things. There are WMS, TMS, forecasting, retail software, last mile delivery software. So all these things are integrated now. And inventory planning, now people are not thinking it only within the, let's say, the boundaries of that specific company. So we want to go beyond that. What some of OEMs, so they are very keen that how much tires I am keeping. They want real-time inventory on that. Similarly, I am very keen how much tires are being kept at the dealer point. No dealer wants to carry inventory. So the moment I have that sort of a visibility, I would be able to push more tires to the dealer once the inventory is depleted. So this sort of an integrated business planning, nobody can think these kind of things around 5-10 years ago, but these are a real game changers as of now. And just to also say a few points on MMLP. So I think it will be a great game changer. Today I'm running a network of around 20 warehouses across the country. So someone was asking why we have 35 only. Sir, believe me, you can easily cover the country in 35. And logistics is a game of trade-off. So there is a warehousing cost, there is a transportation cost. You need to understand that, okay, where we need to have this facility, so even you will be surprised to know when we are looking for a warehousing facility, even a few kilometers, like recently in one particular city, there were 2 warehouses which we shortlisted for our operations, and we wanted to cater to the city also through that warehouse. So everybody wants to do a consolidation. Nobody wants to have multiple n number of warehouses. No. So there was a difference of a few kilometers between these 2 warehouses, and the one which was at the perfect location for us was selected, shortlisted. So that sort of a, you can say, micro level analysis is being done nowadays. So I think with MMLP, it will be a great game changer. Today I'm running a network of multiple warehouses. I can piggyback such an good network, which is giving me an opportunity to even cater to northeast sector, and it's connected through rail also. It is connected through different means of transportation, where the today Jodhpur might have 3 different ICDs, but I am not so sure the railway schedule, how coherent it will be in future. But with MMLP coming in and a complete integration happening of rail, roadways and everything, so definitely this will be beneficial to me, so that I can plan my replenishment cycle accordingly. That okay, by so and so time, this is my transit time. There is some sort of an assurance on that transit time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ramachandran, if I can request you to share light on your experiences of what sort of infrastructure that needs to be built within the warehouses to enable these technology interventions. like AI, robotics, etc., with reference to your experience?
So I just want to put an example over here. We have developed a parts distribution warehouse, and in fact, the initial intent was to develop it as a regular warehouse. But what we felt is that the end user felt is like doing a regular warehouse will bring down the efficiencies as well as more error, because 10,000 parts were to be handled. And the second thing is the cost of real estate. So that is when what we did is like we worked together on ASRS and vertical carousel and sorters. So we have brought in almost all the automations for the warehousing. And what has happened is effectively 4.5 lakh square feet, which was something we planned, has come down to 2.5 lakh square feet of footprint. And we were able to kind of achieve almost 85% of CBM, and that has helped us kind of to reduce the manpower, and the second thing is like the cost of real estate, and the ultimate aim is to reduce the error as well as the efficiency. So automation has helped in the whole process to bring down many factors in terms of cost as well as efficiency, I would say.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we can open the forum for questions. In the interest of time, there are 2 questions we'll have. I'll request to state your question in brief and the person whom it is directed to. Yeah.
We'll need a mic to run around.
So I will need a mic.
Can I ask?
Yeah, I think that was the first hand raised, I guess, on that.
It's not one. Hello? Hello?
Hello. Yeah, I am from the railway industry actually. I was hearing to the part what Mr. Bhanswali has mentioned, being a railway official. What I feel, sir, actually it's coherence which needs to be brought into now. Sorry. There has to be.
Can you, yeah, just come, and come close to the mic, please.
Yeah.
Whom this question is directed to?
This is both to Mr. Kathuria and to Mr. Bhanusali as well.
Sure.
You were mentioning about the coefficient, why it has not picked up. What I feel, sir, it's rather an observation that there needs to be a coherence with the industry. You are catering mainly to the containerized traffic, which is there. There has been innovations on the bulk traffic movement a lot, and the free loading time has been brought down by many of the stakeholders. For example, for moving the iron ore, coal, dolomite, for example, certain experiments needs to be done on the containerized traffic also in a major way. I feel potential is immense what the railways can offer you. The operational practices needs to be streamlined a lot in this. This would be one of the way how the railway coefficient can be enhanced, number 1. And number 2, on the technology part, I think there could be something more which could be done on the part of container movement. We should not think only about the automation which is happening on the warehousing part. The automation which could be done in a very consistent way with the railway traffic movement also. That is one of the area I think which would enhance this. And thirdly, about the speed part. And when I say speed, this needs to be addressed on the empty movement. Like, for example, iron ore and imported coal traffic. If I cite an example from Paradip Port, now the imported coal which is going to Kalinganagar or to JSW, and vis-a-vis the finished steel movement can also be done through the container part. So these are few of the observations I think which could enhance the railway coefficient and make the process smoother.
Okay, I will give a short response to that, and then Mr. Kasturia can respond. There's absolutely no doubt about what you mentioned is that there has to be a organized effort and coherence of action in order to modally shift cargo from road to rail. The rail solution which is provided in general purpose wagons by Indian Railways primarily is dry bulk solution. To some extent, it also offers brick bulk solution by way of what is called the covered wagons, wherein back commodities can be carried. However, railways requirement continues to be largely, and not entirely, largely a single consignment of a single type of cargo from a single point of origin to single point of destination. So we're talking about something like 2,500 to 3,500 tons of cargo type. Manufacturing industry does not manufacture and distribute cargo in that size at all. The entire manufacturing industry, both on industrial space and consumer space, concentrates on maximum a full truckload. In many cases, it's actually less than truckload. So the only mechanism by which you can bring manufacturing industry to railways is by way of containerization, and containerization plays a great role in that. I have run container business for 17 years. I have tried to do domestic business in containers continuously, and I have successively failed year after year. The reason for this is the transit times which are offered by Indian Railways, and this is not a criticism, this is a suggestion, and I do bring it to the doorstep of Indian Railways very often, is that the transit time which currently is possible on Indian Railway network does not justify investment which is required in 90 containers on train, 90 containers on ground, both at a point of origin and point of destination, and a train which costs about 20 crore rupees. Because if you don't sweat out that asset and if you don't have a return on equity, no one is going to put money there. So the transit times have to come down drastically, and that is why network capacity of Indian Railway has to go up. Indian Railway is working towards that. Dedicated freight corridor is primarily aimed at that. So that answers the first part of the question. The second part of the question is that any common service provider actually brings in efficiency. Currently, the consumer industry, the producing industry and the consumer industry is primarily into rail transportation. So colliery, powerhouse, etc., they are the single customers there. Moment you have a common service provider by way of a third party logistics service provider, your efficiencies in terms of return haul, etc., will start coming in. In fact, that is also a suggestion to the warehousing industry. In warehousing industry also, we need common service providers to bring in capacity so that the public warehouses become more efficient and the unit cost of warehousing comes down. Similarly, on transportation side, we expect something similar.
We will stop at this because we have a next session to go for, and there is a lunch in. We don't want to delay everybody else. Anybody who has more questions, panelists will be available. They can take it up one-to-one, please.
So extending warm gratitude to the esteemed panelists and the august audience for your patience hearing. Thank you so much for this session.
There's so much to say and so little time at all.
It's a very large subject. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's vacate the space for the next panel. Right, sir? Thank you. Let's catch up. I'll get it done.
Requesting everyone to kindly be seated. We are starting with the business session 2 on creating a robust and resilient supply chain ecosystem, achieving operational excellence. resilient supply chain ecosystem, achieving operational excellence. I'm pleased to invite our distinguished dignitaries for this session to kindly join the dais. Mr. Varun Dutt, Head Logistics and Supply Planning, Dabur India Limited. Mr. Amit Kamath, Senior VP, Center of Excellence, All Cargo Supply Chain. Mr. Arun Salvi, Head Supply Chain Petchem in Reliance Industries. Mr. Ashwani Nath, Chief Commercial Officer Logistics DP World Subcontinent. Mr. Anil Syal, President Safe Express Private Limited. May I request the moderator, Mr. Jeffrey Thomas, to kindly take over the session, and I know Jeffrey you will manage the time well.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I would request all the delegates to kindly get seated.
Requesting all the delegates to kindly be seated, please.
Yeah, that'll be helpful. Ladies and gentlemen, requesting you to kindly get seated and allow us to start with the session. Thank you very much for your cooperation. So we have a very interesting topic and a very relevant topic for our panel discussion today, centered around creating a robust and resilient supply chain ecosystem. And I must actually congratulate FICCI. Without taking a lot of time, I'll do that, in putting together a great panel where we have people from the user side of logistics as well, logistics service providers, people who've been in the infrastructure space along with logistics, all of that. So absolutely the right forum to address questions around robust and resilient supply chains. I'm just conscious of time. We're running late, and I've been told that we need to cover up for the delay from the previous sessions so that everybody is on time for lunch. So I'll dive in straight. I'll start with Mr. Ashwani Nath. Ashwani, one of the things when we talk about a robust and sustainable supply chain, and we've been hearing this from various players, is that it is also a situation where interventions that will be brought in would have long-term benefits, and at some cases short-term pain maybe as well. But at the same time, a large part of our user industry is somewhere in between the cost to value transition, right? What's been your experience around this as you look to be a part of global supply chains which are becoming resilient and integrating India into that story? What do you see? What's been your experience around that?
Thank you, Jeffrey. Always fun to be the first to go, yeah? So, you know, in my opinion, and from the perspective of the organization I represent, COVID or political considerations, everything has changed the way the consumer behavior is today. For us, the final customer, the customer of the brand, people like you in the room who's buying the product or touching and feeling it, is a final proof of how a supply chain or logistics should be designed. So fundamentally today, logistics and supply chains have been designed, to Jeffrey's point, as cost centers within organizations. I'm sure most of you will allude to what I'm saying. So when you become a cost center, and some of my esteemed colleagues are here as logistics providers, you go into an organization and you say, you know, what can we do for you? They'll say, listen, I'm buying a truck for 10,000 rupees. Can you give it at 9,000 rupees? So people are trying to buy the product on a very unimodal fashion, either only trucking or only ocean or only warehouse, whatever. They're not looking at optimization or the value chain or productivity or efficiency. I'm not saying everyone. I'm not trying to paint everyone red with one brush. But there are many organizations which are looking at a change. So if I bring both these elements together, whether it is B2B or B2C, they have the same requirement. I was sitting with the paints industry leadership yesterday, They only do B2B primarily. And for them, even the last painter who's coming and picking up buckets of paint is literally a B2C environment. Agility, availability of product at the last point of sale is where your value chain will start. I'm sure my colleagues here, like Varun, would be clear to explain as we go along, what is their expectation? What is the job to be done? So just to close it off very quickly, and I'm sure you'll have more questions later, my perspective is that one, you need to understand collectively as users and providers, what is the job to be done? What is the expectation? And then work backwards in designing a supply chain which is agile, which is playing to the requirements of the final consumer, and the brands themselves or manufacturers start looking for logistic services which are more integrated, more holistic, more related to value chain than buying something very unimodal. Back to Jeff.
Thank you, Ashwini. That's very clear and to the point from your end, and that actually brings me to Mr. Salvi. Mr. Salvi, this whole journey from cost to value we've heard, and this is a challenge most players also experience. At the same time, industries like yourselves with your own net zero goals, etc., a large part of your transition cannot happen without your scope 3 emissions and your scope 3 suppliers actually helping you do that. So how are industries like yourselves moving in that direction, or what's the arm that you're extending to help the logistics industry move towards that journey of making the entire supply chain more sustainable?
Yeah, go ahead. No, good question, Jeffrey. But when I look at the continuity of discussions since the earlier conversation and what really kicked off for this one, I think supply chain largely, the way it is designed, or the way we all have been focusing on for the last 20, 30 years in different organizations, has been in the buckets of, where the primary and the secondary converges, which was just talked about, the paints example, where typically, everybody gathers up in the morning, picks the buckets, and you do your work. And that's largely for most of the industries, whether a wide variety of industries. And all these have posed different challenges in terms of optimization. And there is a significant amount of work done in these areas as well. So work or areas that we have excelled in clearly is in terms of technology, optimization, network optimization, in terms of both the software, and we have done ourselves and given it to the rest part of the other geographies as well, both in terms of competencies and both in terms of what we do. Coming to your question and linking it to net zero, linking it to sustainability, linking it to other things which are important for us, I'll add safety also here. Clearly, there's a lot of discussion going on multimodal and shifting from road to rail, and that's one significant part of moving towards more sustainable ways of doing it, not only economical but also sustainable. But I think in great detail there was discussion around challenges of today. What rail does, which is the first number one sustainable way of doing things, is largely focused around core industries, which is the bulk, cement and fertilizers and food and agriculture. And we need to understand that this is a large forum. The exact expectations or the way the final customer expects is different for different industries. And within that, we are trying to transition and come to one area as to what is really required in terms of getting forward. Having said that, two areas that needs to be focused on, which I would put it, one clearly was infrastructure, which is not currently optimized within the organization or within the boundaries of the organization. And I think the TVS CEO talk about that most of the manufacturing today is talking about outsourcing or giving away not their core skills to areas to consolidate. And once that consolidation, which will happen, which is largely for the warehousing part, when smaller warehouses will come together, and that's where the MLPLPs will come up, or there would be large standards, warehousing with standards which offer both in terms of technology and infrastructure will come up. That will easily give rise to both the aspiration of meeting the standards of safety, which any organization or we as a country to aspire for. That will also give rise to both in terms of standards of safety for both transportation as well. We talked about both the hardware and the way the driving is done on the road. So in this journey, definitely, I don't think so organizations are behind in terms of partnering with their vendors or service providers to set up better standards, both in terms of hardware and software, that is the training part, as well as inducting maybe fleets which are alternate fuels or fleets which could be both in terms of CNG or other areas. At the same time, going to rail. I think that's the first step. Maybe then we can take it forward.
Thank you, and agree with you that it's actually a multifold story which will help us reach there. Part of it could be the transition to rail. Part of it would be the transition definitely of alternate fuels, ZETs, the role that technology will play in making the chains themselves more efficient, and all of that would together contribute towards making the supply chain more sustainable and resilient. At that point, I'd like to bring in Mr. Dutt. Mr. Dutt, what's been your experience around the adoption of, for example, data-driven support systems to support your logistics service providers in making the chain more resilient and sustainable?
Yeah, hello, very good afternoon, everyone. So I would like to talk more here about two things. One is from the service front, which and as an organization we are looking at, and one is at the service providers end, who is implementing the technology as per today's scenario. If we look at it, what's important for organization as well as what's important for the service provider is the real-time tracking of the fleets, whatever they are running in the market. Again, I will divide it into two parts. One will be like fleet owners. They have their own systems like GPS implemented in the vehicles, so they are tracking it. But there are market players also who is currently taking service from multiple service providers who is not having a big numbers of fleets. But their tracking mechanism is missing. I can divide it into like 50% market players as well as 50% fleet owners. So that real tracking mechanism need to be get implemented for those vehicles also, which is currently running in the market. In addition, I would say there is also a challenge which currently as a service taker we are facing is in terms of I heard in the previous session also many people have mentioned that nowadays Delhi to Bombay is 24 hours. But please ask the service takers, we are still not getting the vehicle in one day. We are still getting vehicle in 4 days, and we are still not able to get the visibility in a very clear sense that whether vehicle is going to reach at the destination point on time or not. Third thing, they will definitely like to put up some sort of a mechanism which will help them to understand the challenges which a driver is facing. There are currently many systematic way available in the market, which is in form of IoT, which they can figure out whether one single driver is running a vehicle is a right way, or running with two drivers is a right way to ensure the utilization of road infrastructure will be on a better pace. Additionally, as a service providers, they are also investing hugely on the fleets. They should also think about it that whether their fleet on road will give them a better returns, or their fleet is running a 7 day in a week, running one trip and fulfilling the cost. So they have to think about that logic also. And additionally, I would also add on that there is currently multiple data analytical points is available across the industry, where you can simply think about it, whether we can do a route optimization. Yes, we can do a route optimization. As somebody mentioned, there are ring roads, there are national highways available, there are multiple routes currently being done. I know many people, we all are currently using Google Maps. whether that can be implemented for these drivers also, so that they can follow a right route, so that vehicle will run minimum kilometers, save on the fuel cost, save on the maintenance. They can think about on that logic. Would also like to add that they need to think about it where they are losing the money. They are losing the money on account of detentions. We as a service taker can openly say that yes, there are detentions, but there are detentions at our end, maybe a 1 day or 2 day, but there are detentions at the toll plazas. There are detentions at the entry to one state to the other state. There are detentions which would have been because of some traffic rules which is implemented by the government officials. So then they need to think about it, whether they have to fight with us, they have to fight with the government policies, they have to fight with the infrastructure development. So that would definitely help as a, it will help both of us. So basically my ideal point is that it will help industry at an overall level to utilize your fleets on a better way, utilize your time on a better way, and also helps you to ensure the infrastructure which has been developed by the government is getting properly utilized. Right now I seriously feel like there is a gap. Again, I will divide the transportation into two parts, which is like one is primary, where the bigger fleets get used, and the other one is the secondary, where smaller fleets get used. Wherever we have a primary transportation, a bigger fleet is getting used. There are multiple players sitting over here in the room. They can very well say that they have the fleet available in the market to run for us. Absolutely fine. Look upon the secondary transportation where we would not able to use the infrastructure which has been developed by the government. Currently also, as an industry, all FMCG is currently working with 25 to 30 CNFs still in the market. They also want to, an average kilometer run which they are running is average like 400 kilometers. We also want to go beyond the limit to 800 to 1000 kilometer from one CNF to the customer point. We are not able to do it because it impacts our service visibility. We also want that secondary transportation should get fulfilled in 24 hours, which didn't happen. As a service provider, I think again data will talk a lot about it. You can think about it that whether I am running currently at 400 to 600 kilometer, can I go beyond a limit to fulfill the service? If yes, if you have an answer yes, then definitely as a industry commodity, we are definitely in for those kind of infrastructure development, and definitely it will help as a overall country to grow with respect to decrease the cost of logistics, which many people are talking here about from 14 to 9% to 8%. But it will take a lot of time because it's not only one industry which get impacted by this. There are multiple industries like cement, steel, which is a bigger player. Again, rail will play definitely a big role in that. One point again I want to add over here, containers availability and route which is required to run from one location to the other location to deliver a good is still not available. There is still infrastructure requirement is very high, which need to be get fulfilled by the government as soon as possible. So that's it from me.
Thank you, Varun. Thank you. And thank you for bringing across the perspective of the user industry very clearly and strongly. I'd like to bring in Mr. Syal at this point. Mr. Syal, more from a perspective and moving back a little to the whole sustainable point. What do you believe could be some of the strategies that could be pursued towards building a resilient supply chain?
I would have actually liked to have responded to Varun's
Please feel free.
Some issues.
Yeah. That's
since you moved me into another direction, I am happy to deal with that.
I'm happy if you could just maybe do a quick response and then.
Not a response, but I'll add to a couple of sentiments what Varun has added or alluded to. Specifically, stuff like fleet utilization in terms of house service, because I'm the only transporter sitting here. He seemed to have mentioned something similar to our sector. So for a minute, let me just wear the hat of the industry insider and tell you, in terms of vehicle utilization, this myth of
single driver versus multiple driver is not the sole reason as to how one can speed up trucks on the road or improve transit times or whatever. There are multiple elements attached to it. The other factor which he mentioned about, which I can connect to the other resilient part, is he mentioned very appropriately, and that's a fact that we all have been noticing, that almost all FMCG companies, and this is not just to FMCG companies, this is to various other sector industries also, including Neeraj's JK and a few others if they are here, and that almost all entities are maintaining 25, 28, 30 CFAs across the country. If I can string that to the point that you mentioned about, I think the one very relevant change, transformation that has recently happened, that kind of enables a very good long-term resilient supply chain creation, and not much is being talked about, that is GST. If I can kind of put this in a time scale, somewhere around 2017 when GST came through, and if you can kind of just put it as a parallel to a few other stuff that happened, or few other developments that have happened during the course of these few years. India's expressways and highways have moved close to about 60% higher than what it used to be in 2015 or 16. So today we have more than 70,000 more kilometers on the highways. Speed has actually, or performance of fleet on the road have actually technically improved. GST has taken away a whole lot of hindrances en route. So specifically ones Varun mentioned about interstate, the haltages on interstate movements or interstate changeovers, which is commercial tax checkposts and what have you. Those have kind of gone. Documentation has got streamlined. E-way-bills have kind of taken away inspections on road and such. So what has actually happened, if you put, so there's no better time. We of course did take a small pause during the COVID layover, but if you kind of take a big picture view and try and see what has happened over the last about 4-5 years, GST is one of the most revolutionary changes that is actually providing organizations across the board, across the sectors, the opportunity to set your supply chains appropriately. The way I see it is, if you look at pre-GST, the reason I say that is the pre-GST, the supply chain networks were designed to suit the statutory obligations. You wanted to save a LST or CST and so on and so forth, so you created multiple CFA locations. For an example, if you just see NCR, you would have, Varun would have or Dabur would have a warehouse in Delhi, one in Ghaziabad, one in Gurgaon, maybe not too far away, one in Ambala, or maybe another one in Chandigarh, or another one in Ludhiana, another possible one in Jaipur. Now put it on a radius, and you will see these are less than 300 kilometers distances. In 300 kilometers distance, which is much in today's parlance, be about overnight distance away. Why would you need a warehouse in 6 of these locations? There's no accessibility advantage. It was tax advantage at that time. So what is happening now? You actually organizations of such nature have got a massive opportunity right in front of them to be able to recreate their supply chain network or redraft their supply chain network in such a way that it can overcome the accessibility handle, with smarter warehouse, or rather larger warehouse, while not losing out on the service deliverability standpoint. I don't remember the name of the gentleman who was in the previous session. He was referring something about, I think it was Mr. Bhanushali who was referring something about inventory related cost. So So all these warehouses are actually adding to your inventory cost. So if if you're integrating warehouses to one or maybe fewer, you're actually reducing your inventory holding, you're building economies of scale. Of course, you've got to make sure that these are, because you're doing it at a time which is now, you have the opportunity of creating better optimized automated warehouses and such, which effectively is lesser cost, to logistics, not to GDP, but to the logistics of that organization. So kind of, if there was a time, there's no better time than now to get your ducks in a row. Make sure that your structures, your supply chain structure is built, or your supply chain network is suited for a much longer distance than it is now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Sial, for sharing those thoughts. You made a very apt point that it's also in terms of opportunities that the policy end has already been taken care of, and it's the infra side of that story which needs to get fixed by players in terms of their operating model to be able to achieve these benefits. I'd like to bring in Mr. Kamath at this point of time. Mr. Kamath, in your view, what would be some of the key challenges of a logistics service provider in driving sustainability?
Great. Thanks, Jeffrey. Basically, what happened is that, everybody wants to go either carbon neutral or net zero kind of thing by around 2040 or 50, depends upon the company actually. And then how we drive that actually? We can drive that by deploying e-vehicles, electric vehicles. Then we can have the alternate fuel, which emits less CO2 as compared to the typical diesel. Then we have the network optimization plays a very important role in all these things actually. That moment you reduce the number of travel distance of the vehicles actually by optimizing the inventory, then definitely that will also reduce your sustainability. But doing all this, then in terms of the warehouse, so basically we need to go for the solarized warehouse, where all the need of that particular warehouse should be generated from the solar rooftop kind of thing, or efficient lighting. Then if you go for say MHEs kind of thing, then instead of a typical lead acid battery, go for the lithium ion battery, which will improve overall efficiency of the MHEs, as well as the power consumption. So all these things will require a one-time investment actually. And the payback of all this investment in sustainability is typically ranging from 5 to 7 years, sometimes 8 years, 10 years kind of thing. And the typical contracts which we enter into with any customer actually. So typically for transportation, it might be 1 year or 2 year, and then every year or every couple of years after that, customer want to renegotiate the rates and other things. So there is not a long-term commitment from the customer side. That is one challenge while achieving the sustainable goal actually. And other thing is that in terms of the warehousing, actually same case. We have 3 years, 5 years with no kind of a lock-in kind of thing. And as against that, we have to invest a heavy amount in bringing this sustainable solution for the customer as well as ourselves. So this is the one major challenge which we are facing. But definitely with more focus on going for the net zero or the carbon neutral, there are pressure on the customer side also. And then we become their scope 2 or sometimes scope 3 carbon emission reduction partner. So definitely going forward, what we expect is that, and there are not many companies, basically not all the logistics players, if you consider the top 40, 50 logistics players, other than that, whether all other guys are also doing this sustainability or not. If they are not driving the sustainable solution for their customer, then definitely they will maybe the cost competitive as compared to us. So then we expect that customer should consider, while selecting their service provider, one of the point is that how sustainable that particular organization is. So that is one thing which we need to think from the point that means basically all the service provider means in this particular forum, I guess most of them are working towards sustainability. Like say at all cargo company level, we have taken a target that we want to be the carbon neutral by 2040, and we are already started working towards that. But definitely we require the support from the customer also, so that we can accelerate that. So instead of 2040, if I can able to achieve it by 2038, that will be good. Because anyway, as a India, we also given certain commitment at Paris Convention that okay, we want to be the carbon neutral also. So definitely we require that kind of a support, Jeffrey, from the customers. This is one of the challenges as a service provider we are always facing. But we took our step towards that to achieve the sustainability, and we thought that as a partner they should treat us as a partner, and they should take one step also. That will be really great. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for bringing it out so clearly, sir. We've had one round of conversations around challenges, difference of expectations from the user industry side, the logistics service provider side. Maybe we now just switch gears a bit towards solutioning. And one of the solutioning definitely is around technology and digitization, wherein the whole digital journey could be married to the sustainability journey, right? And some of the cost disadvantages that come up through interventions which are related to sustainability could be neutralized through other interventions. Let's pick that thread up. And again, Ashwini, I'd like to come to you first to show us the light on that. As to how do you see digitization technology playing a role in making these supply chains more resilient, sustainable?
So, folks and all of you in the room, we have heard the challenges which touch us in our daily life every day. We are growing up with these. So whether it is the users like Mr. Salvi, Mr. Dutt, and others like them, or the logistics providers, we have grown as traditional organizations in 2PL, 3PL. We have done the best we could in terms of running our own warehouses, having our own trucking systems, trying to source what we can. And there's nothing wrong in what we all did. So one of the points raised, it's about outsourcing. It's a major decision in organizations to say, is it the right time or step to take to move out of our comfort zone of managing our inventory and giving it to someone else to handle? So critical part here comes to be the discussion of the last 10-15 minutes, which is inventory. I don't think the element about just tracking a truck or where is it is so important as the inventory. People today want to know, where is your inventory? That is your cost. That's the elephant in the room. You need to track your inventory at order level, SKU level, item level, shelf life level. Everything else is the ecosystem. Whether it is a trucking tracking, whether it's a rail system, whether it's sustainability, it will all fall into place. So Jeffrey, honestly, you use two words intermittently, digitization and digitalization. So just for the sake of clarity, digitization is where we are today, trying to even create a manual documentation and move it into a digital format. Digitalization will come much later on, folks. European countries, American countries have gone to that direction. First, let's fix our own data from manual into something which is readable by machines. And then that data can be used analytically, machine learning or whatever, to translate it into a very digitalized form and use it jointly. So my recommendation is, let's keep all doing the good work we are doing. But I'll again go to the first opening gambit that I had given you, that we need to work collectively in the industry, and honestly, whichever customers are customers, which is users like Mr. Salvi and Mr. Dutt and others, and many more of you in the room, they're engaging with us. We are sitting with these C-level people today and discussing how can we streamline their supply chain. Inbound, even work in process, in-plant logistics, and outbound. They need a single point of contact who's innovative enough to understand their pain points, understand the job to be done, and I'm again saying job to be done, and then try and provide them a solution which suits them. How much inventory to keep in which location? What is the agility? What is the cost? Shelf life in your case is very important. Once you have nailed it, then you start piloting your digitalization point to point, and as Mr. Syal said, in one location, one region, one geography, and then copy paste, and you leap very forward. But folks, eventually, you have to move towards an integrated logistics environment of a single document and single invoice if you want that optimization to come through. If we keep buying and selling services on a unimodal basis, we are going to struggle as an industry.
Thank you. Thanks, Ashwini, for bringing it out very clearly. I'd like to come in to Mr. Salvi, you at this point of time. Just taking the thread from where Ashwini left off in terms of becoming an integrated industry, right? And looking at logistics as an integrated mechanism rather than a unimodal mechanism. Just along that thread, what's been your experience, especially with technology, digitization, right, or the lack of it, right, either enabling, becoming a hindrance in all of this coming together, in these different stakeholders in the ecosystem coming together, rather than, for example, today being disparate in that sense?
No, very good point, and I think we are at that stage collectively. So I think every organization has made technological advances, and India, we know, is a software hub. We are good at, so most organizations have a very good transactional backbone, either through SAP or other systems, which is then layered up with optimization. However, this is done within the organization, and I would agree what was said here in terms of integrating. Now, which are the opportunities available for integrating? And there are avenues for collaboration. So we talked about transportation earlier. We talked about that 14 to 9 gap, and now let's break it down further. So when you look at road, and of course you talked about it, Mr. Anil, in terms of the transportation lead time reduced. However, the larger asset utilization, the opportunity lies both at the loading time and also at the end time, and of course there are minor points at the tolling and everywhere. So there is a potential for digitalization here for every organization or every logistics park as well, to clearly optimize the transit times from gate in to gate out, or how fast you are able to get in that asset and keep it moving. The truck is meant to move. It's supposed to be not for storage. And then at the point of unloading, how fast can you really unload and release that asset? That is not only going to improve your asset utilization, but it also is going to make a good case for your sustainability for any organization to really invest in EV, which is going to be a more costlier asset than one which is currently available. So what really happens, the challenge is to utilize it faster. And how does that utilization not happen? Now let's not assume that the roads and infra is going to get better. So the transit time will be standard, but if you're not going to release that asset faster at both the ends, you're not going to utilize it better. And that's where collaboration comes in. The second part of integrating and collaboration comes in, let's say there is an organization A which wants to use EV, and there's a transporter or organization willing to invest in it. I think the return leg optimization is where we all need to come together. So there are lanes which are very frequently used. We all know the main traditional lanes which are used where movement happens both ways. And this is where all of us need to come together in the next step, where if trucks are moving in one direction, how can we utilize them and release them faster from both ways? And that's where the utilization go up. That's part A. The part A of technology and integration, I can take the example of GPS, which is both integrating, because as GPS as a technology has come in quite since mid of 2000, we have various GPS service providers in this country, and everybody has put a GPS on a truck, and every organization says that put this brand or that. So there are trucks which more than 1 or 2, 3 GPSs on a truck, so there's too much of what you call technology there in terms of embedding it. So we went to the first challenge of embedding technology on the ground and driver getting used to the GPS. Now, I think the way to integrate that further as to there is a large amount of data and what was rightly said is there are phases of how you can do it. The first phase, of course, was getting and embedding the technology on the truck, for example. The second phase, which I think most of us have not cracked it fully, is what to do with this data. There is so much of data or what they really call and data points with this GPS on every truck which comes to you, which are your dedicated trucks, which are market trucks. You could really track the availability, you could track where they are, how far they are from your unit, and thereby again ensuring the utilization of that particular asset faster. It's like what we really do for as simple of what we do in Ola today when we know that which are the vehicles which are near you, let's say if you want to book. I think that part has not really happened for GPS. So that's just really an opportunity available for consolidation of getting all the GPSs of various makes together and getting the data streamlined and then making some sense out of it. And I think there's tremendous potential available for all organizations there. The third part I would really talk about, in fact we talked about, was since a good part of the discussion is on warehousing, consolidation of warehouses, and which really happened as a GST part, which Anji talked about, where that gave an opportunity for all of us to really consolidate and not really have a warehouse in every state, or at least that requirement got questioned. And that got questioned both from the legality point of view and the service levels point of view. And the service level challenge always remains. As long as you can maintain it, that's where the consolidation of warehousing can happen. And what advantage comes out of consolidation is it becomes easier to really upgrade your standards, because if you are to maintain a standard in a Dehradun or a Guwahati versus a Delhi or a major city, that's where consolidation gives rise to both better infrastructure facilities, both for the trucks and the turnover to be better. That is where the MLP concepts will take over. At the same time, automation, racking, ASRS, you could store higher, because doing this in a smaller warehouse will again question the economics of scale, which was talked about earlier. And therefore, again, the potential of consolidation and integrating is available both for infra as well as in terms of automation there. Moment you have smaller warehouses, you will have to depend upon manual labor, handling, those parts. Yeah. A larger warehouse will give you opportunities and scale, both for the investment justification as well as to really get the service levels which are really aspired for. So I think there are numerous such examples, but I think we can.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And on both the points that you mentioned, I think that the whole handover, takeover, or the interface when load is offered to a logistics service provider, the delay at that point of time, or the ease at that point of time, becomes a very critical element. This is not just road. I believe even in rail, the kind of time that it takes to load cargo from facilities is significantly high, impacting asset turnarounds, then return on equity, etc.
Just to add, it's between road to rail as well. It is between ports. So a good part of the NLP interchange or the handover is where the efficiency losses or the opportunity to create value lies for us.
Very true. And on the other part of consolidation, which you were mentioning, and in India, our demand side is also pretty fragmented. Supply side also is largely fragmented. We have a both demand side, supply side fragmentation. But if you look at some of the e-logistics platforms which came up in the country, you'd be surprised that the total penetration or the market share of e-logistics platforms in this country is less than 1%. Yeah. So even that is an area where digital technologies have struggled. And I'd like to bring in Mr. Kamath once here. Mr. Kamath, the whole standardization, integration that Ashwini spoke about, on the EXIM supply chains, we've seen this happen more successfully. But on the domestic side, we've struggled with it. what, in your view, could be just one or two things that essentially limit that significantly?
So basically, what happened is that globally, all the freight forwarders are there actually. So they are using the common platform. We don't have the common platform currently available in India to track primary transportation, secondary transportation, tertiary transportation. That is the challenge actually. So that one common platform is why Amazon or Flipkart are successful and they are maintaining inventory much lesser than any of the other customers. Why? Because they have the visibility right from their vendor place till the end customer. So they have the hourly visibility of complete inventory throughout the supply chain, which is currently missing for any other customer. Because what happened is that customer is working with the 4 to 5 different service providers and they don't talk to each other. That is the major challenge. So I think basically there are certain customers who themselves have come together and done something like, say, in chemical vertical actually. Lot of chemical customers came together because safety is very important. They have formed one association actually, and whatever the movement of the chemical trucks across India is tracked through that particular software which is developed by that association. Something like that we need to develop, or government should support that. Okay, there should be one seamless system there. Everybody should upload data into that system, and then anybody can access that data for that particular shipment kind of thing. If that kind of a visibility is there, then definitely all these challenges can be curtailed down. Or other way of managing is like the globally it is managed, that okay, we have to go for 4PL kind of a concept, where one service provider, one 4PL guy going to manage all the 3PLs who are there for that particular customer, and they have the complete visibility of the supply chain, and then that visibility can be helpful for the customer to reduce their inventory as well as overall the optimization of supply chain. So that way we can work out actually.
Thank you for that. And I hope as we create more tiers, we still be optimal on cost, because the expectation would still be that there's more efficiency that comes in to compensate for the direct costs getting lower. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kamath. Varun, I'd like to bring you in at this point of time. The whole integration story also loops in very well with circular value chains, right, where different players need to get integrated. Dabur is one organization which has taken a target of having a completely circular value chain by 2030. What is the role that you see logistics service providers playing in this journey for a company like yourself or any other organization which has taken up a target there?
So basically, we are very much working very positively and very in collaboration with all service providers. So we are working to enhance their technology. We are pushing service providers to put on work on GPS as well as SMS based tracking mechanism. We are pushing them to ensure that they will look upon the other resources, alternate fuels you can mention. You can say that CNG vehicles, we are working very much with many of the players for the EV vehicles even. And even we are the one, I'm not sure this is the forum or not, but we are the first FMCG who is currently working with the OEMs to work upon the higher tonnage vehicles in terms of doing the work with us in terms of planning their way, how they want to work upon. Even we are working also with some of the blended fuel service providers to work with us so that we can give them a vision that which are the location, which are the routes where we have a two-way model of transportation, where they can figure it out if they will do an alternate fuel as well as biofuel in terms of running the vehicles. We are working on that also. Even though we are also working to reduce the carbon footprint, we are working to utilize more of an alternate route of a transportation. So that is truck versus rail. We are working with some of service providers to move our goods more with rail movement versus truck movement. So that is happening across India. So I would say that we will be definitely looking upon the players who are currently working upon running the rail model. Definitely come to us and have a word with us. I openly invite you all. And in addition, we are also working upon, in terms of, as mentioned, warehousing. We are using the solar system in our warehouses to ensure the ESG will work upon. Even we are also working on the model to, I just want to add up this because nobody has touched upon that point, is in terms of availability of the manpower, moreover of a skilled manpower. We are talking here about the technology, we are talking here about multiple initiatives, but if those manpower are not skilled enough to use that technology, then we won't be able to reach at the level which we are looking upon. We are ourselves is putting up some sort of initiatives in-house as well as out-house, where we are training the people so that they will be able to understand what technology improvement is happening and how it is going to help them as well as us in terms of long run. We are also working with consolidation and in terms of utilizing the higher tonnage vehicles versus smaller tonnage vehicles in the secondary transportation, because that is another way we look upon, as my fellow colleague have mentioned, that inventory is very important to take care of. We are focusing on that. We will keep minimal inventory in our overall portfolio of mechanism, from movement of inbound to the outbound sector as well as to delivery at the customer point.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Varun. Thank you very much for that. I'm just conscious of time, so I took the liberty of requesting Mr. Sial if he could come in at this point of time and talk to us about the whole journey of transitioning to becoming net zero. And bringing this whole conversation together that we've had, whether it's around integration, it's around consolidation, it's around inventory. How do we all transition towards a net zero economy?
Allow me to circle back on what Arun mentioned about, when he picked the point about integration of warehouses first. The consolidation of warehouses first. I'll pick that point first and then come to the integration and then net zero. And this also adds to the point that Varun was also mentioning, and this is when you are basically integrating warehouses or consolidating them into some, there's not a very simplistic, it's not a zero-sum game that let me shut down 3 warehouses and start doing stuff with one. We must treat that as an opportunity to transition to a better, efficient and possibly more automated warehouse to enable a genuine level cross-docking to happen. And that's the point of what Varun was mentioning earlier about detention and all that. Just by wishing that the same warehouse starts cross-docking enough material for me in the same number of hours, this is not going to happen. So once you're integrating 4 warehouses into 1 or 6 warehouses into 2, you would make sure that sufficient amount of investment has been put in place, or sufficient amount of processes have been put in place to make sure that the throughput is handled appropriately. Of course, I'm invoking everybody to consider this as a opportunity and not just a simple cost cutting method. The second part that you mentioned about that Mr. Kamath mentioned about integration or the e-portals that the integration portals that you were referring about, the penetration is such less. Wanting the government or any association or any of those to fill in this space would be at best wishful thinking. The way I see this happening, and it'll automatically happen. This is law of nature. It'll automatically happen. The reason for that is Mr. Manu is here. He's there constructing. He's representing Warehousing Association of India. These systems of organizations are now becoming large scale. It's getting organized. There's no fragmentation left. There are a lot of MMLPs happening and so on and so forth. So when you are integrating not only railways but also trucking, the warehousing infrastructure, you're basically consolidating a lot of those players in the supply chain in a common space. when you map that into a national level, structure, you will find that this integration automatically, the empty runs that we speak about will automatically reduce. So it will play out over time, but it will certainly. If I was to, kind of integrate that to the point of net zero, unfortunately, my view is a little more pessimistic about that. This is kind of a thing which everybody wants it, but very few know how to do it. I read a very recent report of Deloitte. It said that barely, I think, I don't know whether the number was 23% or 27%, barely 23 or 27% of the organizations are kind of geared, forget about being ready, or even geared to lead in that direction of net zero. There comes time where some interventions trigger actions on various organizations. So one such trigger that I spoke about, or intervention that I spoke about, was GST. This one is more like the COP26, COP27 interventions, which of course India has also taken a pledge for. Our pledge is an intervention, if I can call it that, and that is one reason why the previous panel spoke about a whole lot of net zero initiatives. We are also talking about that and all. To just put a spoiler on that for a moment, before I give you the positive side, the spoiler on that is I see some of us talk about EVs and all that. The penetration of, or even forget about penetration, even the readiness today for electric vehicles in the commercial space is sub 3%, is less than 3%. In the middle mile, long haul vehicle space, EVs are less than 1%. So basically, we are talking about something which is mythological at best as of this moment. And then again, let me just give you one more element of that. Let's say there was an EV available. So the entire ecosystem of EV commercial vehicles is non-existent. Your battery, if you start looking at the well-to-wheels emissions, you will find that it is actually net negative today, unless and until we've actually created the made in India or whatever have you. We've created enough battery manufacturing systems to power these batteries, and the power side of ours is very good, the power generation. So effectively, there is a long game which is possible. My worry in this, if I was to summarize this, is that we'll miss this EV bus, or sorry, the EV truck in the transportation parlance, and we'll possibly join directly into the hydrogen cell capabilities, which is much more revolutionary, much more realistic, and most certainly much more efficient.
Thank you, Mr. Sial, for your thoughts around that. Would just like to add a couple of points. That while the EV, I completely right. Sorry, you said something so interesting that I got tempted to just add to that maybe. So while the EV story definitely is at a very early stage at the moment in terms of how it's realized on the ground, but there's been some, as you mentioned, stimuli need to happen, right? And there are a few good stimuli which are happening around. So for example, there are 22,500 I would say BPCL outlets, which are all creating charging infrastructure all across the highway. So that's process is already on, out of which about 1/3 the government is funding, and the funds have been released. The remaining BPCL is committed to doing by themselves. We have a 7-ton truck model now available in the market. The 15-ton and 9-tonners are all in the kitchen at the moment. So I believe once the charging ecosystem comes up, that works out. On the financing side, there's been a big struggle. SIDBI's now come up with a full loan policy through which EVs can be better financed. So the stimuli that you mentioned, which are very important, like the GST one which happened, there are a few which are happening. I will not hold you all from lunch. The panelists are all available during lunch, so it will be really great if you could take up the questions individually at that point of time. Thank you.
Only one question. Can I allow? One question only. So what's the role of GPT in building reliable, resilient and sustainable supply chain? And my another short question. From beginning, we are talking about roadways, railway, particularly shifting from roadways to railways. Why not we're thinking about other ways? Why not think out of box? As Honorable Minister Nitin Gariji said, the cost of road transportation is only 14 rupees, railways 8 rupees, and if go by water, it's only 1 rupees. So why not we think out of box? Please respond.
If you don't mind, I'll take that one. Yeah. So the waterways question, I think, is more in terms of the readiness for the infrastructure itself, not just the waterways. So today we have two waterways functional, NW1, which is the Ganga, and NW2, the Brahmaputra. You need large number of waterways also to become functional, and the terminals to get developed, first mile, last mile services. It's a whole ecosystem, barges becoming available, financing for barges. It's a whole ecosystem that needs to be developed. So I think that's with regard to the waterway part of it. On the chat GPT or generative AI and the role generative AI will play in logistics, we still believe that the journey for predictive AI will happen first. Once we've gone through the entire journey with predictive AI, and that is also significantly ahead. We're still not even on a single BL for that matter. We go through the digitization journey, then the digitalization journey, and possibly by then generative AI would also have adapted itself. Thank you very much for your question. Sorry, yeah, please, Ashwini's got it. Yeah.
See, what we are doing currently is, just for one customer, just last week, moving cargo from their plant north of Chennai to our port in Chennai, putting it on a ship to Mundra. At our own terminal, Mundra, we put it on the rail to Panipat and give them delivery at their Ambala factory. We have saved 63% sustainability. We have saved them costs. Okay, so SLA, transit time, cost, and greening. So such solutions are available in India. It's just about how industry and the providers get together on a common purpose to find where these solutions are and start winning the battles. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, speakers, for the very interesting session. The ideas and deliberations arising out of this conference would go a long way in addressing the challenges and reflecting on the way forward. With these words, I once again thank all our panelists and delegates, requesting all of you to kindly join us for a lunch on 3rd floor at Banquet Hall.